Okay, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the channel. Haven't posted a few videos for a few days. So I've been really busy with work, but I finally have Saturday off for the first time since before Christmas, so I'm enjoying it. Now, what we've seen over the last few weeks is the Super League pre-season started. The Rob Burrows, Jamie Jones Buchanan testimonial, and of course, Rob Burrows has been diagnosed with motor neuron disease. Stephen Darby, the football player, was diagnosed last year as well. So that's a couple of sports stars in their 30s who've been diagnosed with motor neuron disease, and it's an interesting subplot to player welfare, the links between concussion and other degenerative illnesses. Of course, with motor neuron disease, there is no cure, and he was only diagnosed in December. It's now January, and you can clearly see the deterioration in his condition, even though he did play the last 5 minutes of the testimonial against the Bradford Bulls for the Leeds Rhinos. There's been a lot of player testimonials in the pre-season, so a lot of the veteran players are winding down their careers, and a lot of the younger players getting some chance in pre-season to shine for their coaches. Obviously, I did a video on James Maloney going to the Catalan Dragons, and he's a player to watch. There's a few NRL stars coming over to play in Super League this coming season. So that's a good positive sign for Super League. In rugby union news, Saracens may actually face further punishment for their salary cap breach, as they are still not below the salary cap, and they could actually end up being relegated from the Gallagher Premiership. That's a really interesting ongoing story. Will that affect England? That's something I failed to mention in my Six Nations preview. So we can look at that. The Rugby League World Cup groups. Even though the draw was done a few days ago, not really a lot of sports news covering it. Prince Harry obviously was there for the draw. He's the patron of the Rugby RFL. England's group looks really, really easy. There are some first-time nations in the Rugby League World Cup, like Greece and Jamaica. I think we're going to see very similar knockout stages to 2017. I think Tonga are the most dangerous dark horses out of all the top nations. I think with the way they performed in 2017, the way they beat Australia at the end of last year, I think they're the nation I think to watch out for the most. I think they're underrated. I think they're the nation to watch out for. But I think the knockout stages are going to be very, very similar to what we had in the last World Cup. I think the last semi-finalists will be, England, Tonga, Australia, and New Zealand. I really think that. I think Papua New Guinea do struggle away from home. So even though they show some really good things at the last World Cup, they're in the Northern Hemisphere. They don't do as well. Fiji as well are another nation to look out for. And of course, Sonny Bill Williams has declared that he will be playing for Samoa, or will make himself eligible for Samoa. So that could be interesting to see how the Samoans fit him into their team as well. Some of the other home nations like Scotland and Wales, the funding isn't there. And what we saw with the players just looking so out of their depth at the last World Cup, and the Scottish players, they'll discipline off the field as well with some of their drinking antics. I think what's happened since over the last decade and a half is a lot of the rugby league money in the Northern Hemisphere has gone towards an England team rather than the GB Lions. That's what we saw with that GB Lions tour. That lack of investment in the whole of the UK over the last decade and a half really showed up with the utterly atrocious Lions tour, which they didn't even play the Australians. So imagine if they actually played the Kangaroos, they would have been slaughtered. And the fact that Papua New Guinea blitzed them at the end of the first, beginning of the second half as well, and ripped them to pieces. And the reliance of overseas-born players who have tenuous links to the UK through a parent, a grandparent, really sums up the lack of development in certain areas. So I think while England are the hosts, I think, and that home field advantage that we had 7 years ago, there's a lot of player turnover. There's a lot of up-and-coming players, but I don't think the Super League is as good as the NRL. I've been saying that since the channel started, and before the channel even was a thing. With my friends, I'm saying Super League and NRL, it's a different thing. George Williams, I've seen a fair bit of him in the Super League and in the Challenge Cup. He's a very exciting player. The NRL is a different kettle of fish completely. Completely different kettle of fish, and the style of play is different. Now, Charlie Hodgson is a brilliant player and has taken to a duck like water. Gareth Widdop again, playing his youth level rugby league over here in the UK, going over and playing with the Melbourne Storm, and then with the Dragons. It's an interesting one, really, looking at players coming over from Super League who've played their entire career in the Super League and then going over to the NRL. But the refereeing system is different with the 2-ref system rather than a 1-ref system. There are a few different rules over the play, the ball in the ruck and the tackle area. So he's going to have to adjust his game somewhat. But I think he's got a lot of sniping runs, and there's a lot of bigger players in the NRL. A lot of the forward packs are generally 5-10 kilos heavier. So when you've got to carry all that weight around with less interchanges, he could have a lot of explosiveness as an interchange forward. The pace he'll bring to the game. He can play in the halves as well. So it's going to be an interesting one to see how he adapts his game. But I think he's got those sniping runs around the ruck. He has a lot of pace to his game. He does make a lot of mistakes, and that's something I've noticed as well. He does sometimes go faster than his teammates are ready for. So that's an interesting one. The Rugby League World Cup groups, I mean, we're a year out. A lot can happen. Players can retire, players can get injured. But George Williams, he is a very quick, nimble player. But it's in defence. I think it's where it's going to be really interesting. Will NRL sides target him defensively? And how many minutes a game will he play? And that's another thing where I think the Raiders have to look at how they play him, and Ricky Stewart as well. How they play him? Do they play him as an extra half? Do they convert him to a half, or does he stay as a dummy half, as a 9? That's an interesting one. The Basingstoke Bison Bracknell Bees. The Bracknell Bees are having a disastrous season. I haven't been for a couple of months since I've moved, but looking at the scores, they've had an absolute disastrous season. I don't know. Is Doug Shepherd the right guy to be coach? I can't really predict scores because anything can happen, because the Bison and Bees have swapped so many players over the last couple of years. It's basically the Bracknell Bison, the Basingstoke Bees kind of thing, the interchange between players. But I think it's going to be an interesting one. It's always a feisty rivalry. The record for the EPIHL crowd was at a Bison Bees game a couple of years back for a record crowd of over, I think, 3,000 packed into the Hive that night. I think there was standing room only. So we've seen record crowds in these games for the level of hockey that they play. But I think the Bison will probably edge that one. I'm going for a 5-2. But I could be completely wrong. Steel Dog Raiders. Oh, that's an interesting one. Both teams like a fight. Both teams take a lot of penalty minutes. I'm expecting a lot of penalties in both these games that you're talking about. A lot of penalty minutes, a lot of power plays, a lot of penalty kills, a fair bit of after the whistle action. That tends to happen. The Raiders have a poor disciplinary record. The Steel Dogs have a poor disciplinary record. The Bees and the Bison also have a poor disciplinary record. So that's an interesting one. On the Claude Julien as coach of Montreal Canadiens, Michel Therrien, it's not Claude Julien's fault that the team are where they are. Actually, I think you have to look at how Marc Bergevin has put the team together, and the Carey Price contract is starting to really bite the Montreal Canadiens in the arse. He's only had 2 really outstanding seasons as in his entire career. He's had some pretty solid seasons, but at the same time, he's injury prone, and if you don't have a capable backup, I don't know what. I think Claude Julien's job is safe. I think it's Michel Therrien. He might get picked up by Seattle as a coach going forward when they do announce their coaching setup. But it's Marc Bergevin as the GM. And the Montreal obsession with going with French Canadians, or those who speak French as a second language, is also harming the team in management positions. They need to just be. It's a global game. Even the NHL is a global game now. It has been for 30, 40 years. And their obsession with having a French Canadian as a coach, having a French Canadian as a GM, it's backfiring. They need to be a bit modernised in a sense, since they haven't won the Stanley Cup since I was, I think, 4 or 5 years old. I mean, I'm 30 now. They haven't won the Stanley Cup since the 90s. The way the team's put together, they haven't got 2 or 3 30, 40 goal scorers. They're relying on scoring by committee. The defence, Shea Weber's injury prone. Petrie and Sherrod can't dig that defence out of a hole. Mete's young. Carey Price, that contract. What else have we got? The Latrell Mitchell going to the Rabbitohs, that's a big move. But the salary cap, is part of that. But him crossing the divide of Sydney from the Rooster to the Rabbitohs, that's not going to go down well with some fans. That's a big move for a player to make, to go to the biggest rivals of the team you were playing for. He's an outstanding player. He's basically a young version of Greg Inglis. He can kick goals, he can create, he can score. His discipline, I think, needs to improve somewhat. I think he allows his emotions to get the better of him occasionally, but Latrell Mitchell staying in the NRL is a good thing. I don't think the Super League could afford a player like Latrell Mitchell with the salary cap and the money issues that the sport has. It does intensify the rivalry between the Roosters and the Rabbitohs. That was already intense and hate-filled anyway. But I see him playing a Greg Inglis role with the Rabbitohs. I think I see him possibly playing at fullback, definitely in the centres. I think that's going to be his role. He's going to do what Greg Inglis did in that kind of role in positioning. And yes, he can kick goals, and that's somewhere where the Rabbitohs could use a bit of extra depth, is that extra goal kicker. Should anyone go down injured, I think that's. But at the same time, the Rabbitohs, they've lost Sam Burgess up front. They've lost, I think, it's George Burgess as well. They lost two of the three Burgess brothers, one to retirement, one moving back to Super League. So we'll see what happens with the Rabbitohs and the Roosters as well. I mean, there's a lot of players that have gone both ways with those clubs over the years. It's a big divide to cross. But the salary cap being what it is, it does. It does mix things up a bit. It makes the rivalry more intense. What reception will he get with Roosters fans, considering he came through the Roosters, he's gone to the Rabbitohs. That's a real big step for a player to make. But Crichton made the step the other way, and he took a lot of flack online and a lot of abuse from fans. So it's an interesting one. But the salary cap being what it is, and I think Latrell Mitchell wanting to stay in Sydney narrowed down his options when his contract was up, and you've got to bear in mind the salary cap. It's a divisive topic in a lot of sports, but we'll see what happens going forward. The Astros been caught cheating. There's a fair few clubs been caught cheating in a variety of ways in a variety of sports recently. The fact that they had, they were mic'd up and wired up, that is naughty. I wouldn't be surprised if they're the only team doing it in whatever sport, but there's always a full team. There's always a full guy. There's always a team that gets thrown under the bus when they get caught. We've seen Saracens here in rugby union in the UK basically being thrown under the bus, but they've been doing it systematically for years. The fact that the players were also part of it and deliberately involved with Saracens as well. The fact that any player who comes out and goes, I wasn't aware of any cheating, we're not stupid. It is a massive shame that they've decided to do what they've done. But I'm not a big fan of baseball anyway. Baseball's has had enough issues over the last 30 years with the steroid scandal and amongst other scandals as well. It hasn't fully recovered from the steroid juicing of the ball scandal. It's still trying to rebuild trust with fans. I haven't enjoyed baseball ever, really. I find it a sport that takes too long. It's so slow paced. When we had the London series at the beginning of last summer, reaction was mixed to it, and of course we've got some more Major League Baseball games in London this summer. Again, will this affect how fans perceive the sport, the growth of the sport outside traditional markets, that kind of thing? The Golden Knights' success was rigged by the NHL. Now, there's a lot of conspiracy theories about the NHL rigging it in favour of the Golden Knights. If you look at their team on paper when they actually did the expansion draft, it wasn't actually a great team. A lot of these players were cast-offs that their teams didn't want. William Karlsson's explosion as a player, you can't rig that. You cannot rig Wild Bill. William Karlsson, the way he's gone from Columbus, barely scoring any points, pretty third, fourth line player to one of the top players, you can't rig that. Max Pacioretty keeping you scoring at a constant. You can't rig these things. The fact they paid $500 million to get in, you're going to expect them to have a decent competitive team. But look at their struggles in season 3. They've sacked Gerard Gallant. They brought in Peter DeBoer. That tells you something, that the team isn't happy where they are. They want to be a playoff team, and they're scraping to get in there. But you can't rig the fact that Malcolm Subban has improved massively as a goaltender. You cannot. You can't. Marc-Andre Fleury should be on the downswing of his career. He's still putting up great numbers. William Karlsson, you can't predict I think there's a lot of conspiracy theories, a lot of salty fans. A lot of it's armchair critics at home on Twitter and on Facebook and on YouTube. They're basically saying, this shouldn't work. But we've got Seattle coming in, and they're paying even more money. So we'll see what happens. Plus, the way the team is structured with Vegas is a win now mentality. If they don't do well this season, they're going to be in trouble. They've got some bad contracts on that team if they don't make the playoffs. On the Gerard Gallant getting fired, no one was expecting that. But their form this season's been so up and down. But the whole Western Conference, apart from St. Louis, has been so up and down. The fact that Arizona are leading the Pacific, the fact that Nashville are not in the playoff spot right now. The whole Western Conference in the NHL is a complete mess this season, in the sense that St. Louis are the only team that really look like they could make the Stanley Cup final. The rest of the Western Conference is a real congested mess from second to ninth. One good team is going to miss the playoffs. Maybe two good teams are going to miss the playoffs. In fact, the whole Central Division is a tough division anyway. And the Pacific, look at the California teams. They've completely fallen apart. So the whole hierarchy of the Western Conference is up in the air at the moment. The fact they replaced him with LeBeau, whatever it is, LeBeau, whatever, how you pronounce his name, the former Shark coach, is really surprising, considering that he lost that dressing room pretty early on, and the Sharks fell apart pretty quickly this season. They just couldn't get going. But he had a win in his first game. So is it the personnel? Is it... I feel sorry for Gerard Gallant. I really do. I think as a coach, he's been fired pretty badly by a couple of teams. The Florida situation was pretty shocking as well. But that makes Gerard Gallant ready for Seattle as well. There's a lot of coaches with some really good CVs who are, Seattle as an organization, when they fully announced their GM and their coaching team, could be in the mix to be the coach. I mean, it's only just over a year and a half before Seattle dropped the puck. So we're going to see what Seattle do with their coaching setup, their GM, and a whole variety of other things as well. You have the Seattle insert name, whatever the team's going to be called, are going to be a very interesting team. They've got $650 million they've paid to get into the league. They're going to have a better team than Vegas, I can tell you that for a fact. The fact that Vegas are exempt from the expansion draft, that's going to be interesting. There's going to be a lot of trades made, a lot of pieces are going to move coming up. Well, just because Boucher's signed up with to be an analyst doesn't necessarily mean Guy Boucher is not going to be a coach at some point in the future. Gallant, could he work with New Jersey? Could Mike Babcock? Even with all the negativity about Babcock, that there are a few coaches available right now. I'm surprised New Jersey haven't looked down at the American Hockey League level as well. There's a few pretty solid coaches down there. But we've seen 7 coaching changes so far this season. I wouldn't be surprised if there's more. I wouldn't be surprised if a few GMs lose their jobs as well. Mark Bergevin is one of those GMs who's on the chopping block, because I do think it's not Claude Julien's fault that the team are where they are. There's a reason why Claude Julien has a Stanley Cup to his name. He's not a bad coach. It's the team that's been put together by the GM that he's got to deal with, and he's got to coach these players. Montreal could be, I don't know. Thierrien, he's available. He could end up at New Jersey. At the moment, they've got an interim coach. The record has improved. They're a more competitive team. They're an average team at the moment. They're playing 500 hockey at the moment with the interim. So, and Patrick Roy, there's an he's had coaching experience. Where he ends up is another thing. Could he end up at Seattle? It's a possibility. But at the same time, his time at Colorado was a bit fiery, to say the least. But I think I don't think his coaching career is over. Let's just say that. I think there is an opportunity for Patrick Roy to possibly come back in. But Wayne Gretzky, another star player, with what was Phoenix, now Arizona, didn't have a great spell as a coach either. So just because you're a superstar player doesn't make you a superstar coach. You got to look at those who are coaches now in the NHL. I don't know. And Thierry, yeah, he is doing very well as an assistant coach in Philly. And Alain Vigneault, again, another French Canadian. There's clearly the French connection there. It's working. I'm surprised Alain Vigneault hasn't been, linked with other jobs. But I don't see Vigneault and Thierry going anywhere because Thierry seems better as an assistant. He does. And Vigneault is, I think they've got the right partnership there. It's working well. The team are playing well. They're in the playoff mix. They've got a good solid team. They've got some good youngsters, some good senior players, and they're playing a different style of hockey than Philly's used to. Less fighty, although it's still they're more of a skill team at the moment. They still need a little bit more physicality, I think, to make the all-round package. But at the moment, I think they've got the right pieces in place to be a solid playoff side. But people are saying, "I'll predict the Stanley Cup playoffs, predict who's going to win." There's no point because we haven't even hit the trade deadline. We haven't hit the run-in the last month and a half. We haven't seen how injuries could affect teams. And Kovalchuk, yeah, I mean, that's a big risk. I mean, he was bought out. He signed for league minimum. He was waived and not picked up. He became a free agent. He's been signed. Montreal have had injuries as well. Kovalchuk, he's an older player. He's lost a step. Let's be honest. He's not the player he was 10 years ago. However, he is helping Montreal and he's playing very, very well. He clearly has a point to prove, saying that I'm not past it yet. I've still got a couple of good seasons in me. He's more of a depth line. He's more of a third line player now, but he's a veteran. There's a lot of young players at Montreal. There's a lack of confidence at Montreal. And on his day, he can be a point per game in spurts. But I think it's a big risk signing a player like Kovalchuk who's been bought out. And LA and Ottawa have got loads of players on their books who they bought out or on long-term injured reserves. So certain teams look like they could be hitting that cliff edge with having too many bad contracts. There's a lot of teams that could have a lot of players that they're paying money to that aren't playing on the team. So that's something to bear in mind. But we're coming up to the All-Star break. There's been a big debate about the All-Star break, not only in the NHL, but in a variety of sports. And how All-Star games should be structured and when they should be played and should they actually have All-Star games or just name the All-Star lists. A lot of players not being so keen to play in the All-Star game. Ovechkin being, again, saying, I'm not playing. Players actively telling fans not to vote for them so they can actually get that week off. So the All-Star game is up for debate again. And the All-Star weekend as an event is should it be played postseason? Should it be played in the off season as an exhibition style skills weekend where fans in the off season can watch hockey? Could that be a solution to the All Star situation? Should it be played in pre-season? I think that's something to consider. I mean, I don't follow the Canadians religiously. I'm not a Canadians fan, but there's a lot of teams. I mean, the playoff race in the West is where I'm interested, and that's really congested. There are 8 teams vying for 8. There's 8 teams vying for 7 playoff spots. In the East, it's different. There's still congestion there. I'm not going to lie, but I think the Canadians, with the situation they're in, I think if Carey Price has another bad stretch, I don't know. I'm not sure that they have the players in place. They're going to have to make some decisions before the trade deadline. They're either going to have to decide, right, we're going to make the playoffs, we're going to make a push now and start making trades now before trade deadline, or they're going to have to look at their position come trade deadline day and go, are we in a position to go on a long run through March and the rest of February and through March into the beginning of April to make the playoffs? I think the Carey Price contract is a problem. If you want to bring players in and trade players, the amount of money he is on under the salary in the salary cap, he's 1/8 of your salary cap. Is Carey Price? He's a goaltender. He's a goaltender in his 30s. He's a goaltender who's injury prone. So while he's played well recently, he doesn't have a regular backup. They keep rotating the backups around. Who is going to be the next? Is it Lindgren? Is it Primo? That's a concern. And are they overplaying him? If you do make the playoffs, how much energy is he going to have? How effective is he going to be? And that's something to consider as well. Is the fact that how many games is he playing, and fitness, and the fact that some of the injuries he's had are more likely to reoccur. So that's something to consider as a fan of your team. Is your goaltending tandem or goaltending depth suitable? The defense and the injuries, and are the prospects and the AHL team and the ECHL affiliates, player development, have you got the depth there to fill gaps? This is why Kovalchuk's been signed. That says to me there is a depth issue within the Canadiens organisation. And Marc Bergevin has got to be on the chopping block, because if they miss the playoffs again, or if they get swept in the first round, or they barely make a wild card, that says that there's a massive issue with the team that you currently have. And then when those players are going down injured or ill or suspended, the depth behind in the players coming through, or those players in the AHL who may be bit part players, who may be that seventh defenseman, that extra forward you get scratched. That's the issue you've got to consider, is the next wave of players coming in, the depth, cover injuries, suspensions, and illness. And there's a lot of teams that I think, with the salary cap being lower than expected this season, who've been affected by that, who've had to let some decent players go. They didn't want to let go. I'm a Jets fan. Our defense doesn't exist. It does exist, but we only have one right-handed defenseman. Yeah, we have one right-handed defenseman. Just going to put that out there. And we have been decimated by injury. We lost 7-1 to Tampa last night. I'm not a happy bunny, considering that we smashed the Vancouver Canucks handsomely. We leaked 7 goals. So consistency with teams as well. We're in that congested playoff hunt to get that playoff spot. And we've swung between second and fourth in the division in the Central. The Pacific's getting congested as well. And with Arizona being, the top team in the Pacific, that really mixes it up completely. Wow. There is a guy who's utterly trolleyed. I mean, the weather over here, we've had really heavy rain in the UK. We've had flood warnings and weather warnings and storms. That's going to be really interesting to see how that affects sport today, especially rugby and football or soccer, because the amount of rain we've had, that's going to be interesting. That's something to look forward look at when you look at the results coming in, how teams have been affected by the weather. And it's really cold as well, freezing overnight. So all this rain we've had, it's turned to ice. So it's been really warm for the last week, about 10, 12 degrees, lots of heavy rain. Last night, fell below 0 degrees Celsius, so I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit. That's like 20, 30 Fahrenheit, something like that. Got really cold. So I woke up this morning and a sheet of ice on the grass, like solid. So that's going to be interesting to see how that affects sport today, like horse racing and things like that. But it is interesting. I mean, what's up? We're just discussing sports. I throw you questions. I'm assuming you're a little bit worse for wear, Mr. Thaddeus Kennedy. I think you've had a little bit too much to drink. But from what I've seen and read in the results and things like that, how's the flavour? Oh yeah, no, I've just got over a severe. Well, if you've been following the channel, you know I've had pretty much the last month I've been ill. A lot of people are going down with illness. That's affecting a lot of sports teams as well. A lot of teams have had flu bugs going through and bronchitis and the norovirus. There's been a lot of illness in a lot of sports teams over here in Europe. A lot of teams have been affected. I know that's also affected teams over in the US and Canada as well. That's something else to bear in mind when you're looking at a team and how quickly an illness can go through a locker room. It's decimated teams. Anaheim have had problems with illness in the NHL, rugby union and football over here in the UK. Teams have been decimated by the flu bug at times, and that's where your depth comes in. And this is where your depth comes in, and making sure that when a player goes down sick, and that's really a frustrating one. It's not an injury; it's when sickness bugs hit, and how it affects certain players is your depth. So when I was saying about the Montreal Canadiens having issues, let's say the flu bug sweeps the Montreal Canadiens, goes through their locker room. Okay, depth. If you've signed Kovalchuk because Gallagher's injured, that says to me you have a depth issue, and there's not a lot of trust in the parent organisation with the AHL and ECHL affiliates to develop players, or they've got the players ready to play NHL minutes. That says to me there's a depth issue with Montreal. But the flu bug over here, I'm sort of at the end of it now. But I had a chest infection come out of that, so I was actually really, really ill, and I was working while still, which is why I didn't do a lot of videos. I was really battling the ability to not cough my guts up. It affects people in different ways. Some people have gone down for a couple of days with a little sniffle, a little cough, recover. Others have been constantly ill since September, October. I know people have been having regular issues since September, so 4 or 5 months, regularly getting ill. So it affects people in different ways. Some people have better immune systems. Some people have other underlying health issues, which can affect them. And I think, it affects when you're in that enclosed environment where you've got to work with these people every day, and you've got to in that dressing room. Flu bugs can spread pretty quick. Food poisoning. We've seen that happen before with Pizzagate, with Lasagnagate with Tottenham and Arsenal many years ago. Food bug destroyed the Tottenham team for that final game of the season. So it's really interesting. The FA Cup. Now, this is something that is a hot talking point as well. We've seen UEFA want to make some changes to the Champions League. More changes that are not necessarily positive, and that actually affects the domestic cup competitions in the various leagues in Europe. Now, we've seen the French are deciding to scrap their League Cup. They're scrapping it. It's been done away with. And the debate goes on about, are the cup knockout competitions domestically being devalued? The answer is yes. When UEFA got rid of the Cup Winners' Cup after the 99 season, so at the end of the last century and 2 decades ago, that actually did devalue the domestic cup competitions. It took a while for it to actually devalue them, but it's reached a point now where UEFA are coming up with these harebrained schemes to bring in a third European Cup competition after the Europa League and Champions League in 2021. And they're making changes to the Champions League as well. And that's something that's not gone down well with fans, with the leak. There's been a leak from UEFA. Someone's leaked to the press that there are plans afoot to tinker with the Champions League. A lot of fans aren't happy. I think football is chasing the money and has been chasing the money for 2 decades now, 3 decades now. It hasn't necessarily benefited the game as what people thought back in the early 90s. There's been a sort of negative feedback from fans, really. We've had 28 years now of the Premier League, and I don't think it necessarily has benefited football. Same with the European leagues. I don't think football has necessarily benefited from the extra cash flow coming in. I really don't. Yes, the what we call Lasagnagate. I think only one player didn't get food poisoning all those years ago, 13 years ago. I remember that quite well. It was a battle over the last Champions League space, I believe, and Arsenal triumphed and Tottenham didn't. There's a lot of conspiracy theories about that, but basically, if you have a set dietary menu, don't change the menu the night before. Plain and simple. A lot of conspiracy theories about that. Lots, but it is what it is. Oh, look, Lucozade. A good, wholesome sporting drink. Wow. I picked the Titans. Yeah, I haven't watched the NFL this season, but the fact that I actually managed to get a prediction right, I'm pretty happy with that. I'm pretty stoked. I rarely get a prediction right. I didn't watch any of the game, but you did ask me who would win the Titans or Ravens. The fact that both teams, I think, are playoff teams, and looking at how the Titans played last season, I'm basing it off last season, how I saw them when I did see the Titans play. They were a very offensive team, scored a lot of points. Sometimes you got to go with the unfashionable pick, but I haven't watched any of the NFL this season, so I can't comment on how teams have played, how teams' form has been, injuries, things like that. But I have to admit, getting a prediction right, it doesn't happen often on this channel. I remember one video where I went through all the Premier League fixtures for the weekend and went try to predict the scores, and I got like 2 out of 10 fixtures right or something with a win. And out of that, I got 1 score right as well. So, and that was the wrong team winning, but I got a score right. So, when I come to predicting sport, I say this: I don't predict sport. The only way you can actively predict something is if you're actually involved with a betting fix. That's my answer to anything. If you can actually predict a load of fixtures and the results that will come from that, you've got to be involved in a fix of some kind. And I talk a lot about match fixing on this channel and spot fixing and corruption, and they don't get a lot of views. This is what surprises me. Is I've done a lot of history research into salary cap breaches, match fixing, and various bits and pieces. The views aren't there. People just don't seem to care that the sports that they love are actually got all these issues with, like the Operation Slapshot, the NHL video I did. There were allegations that, backhanders were being done and all sorts. I looked at the NBA betting scandal. Fans don't care. They claim that they care on Twitter and Facebook and social media, and they complain about another match fix. But in reality, when someone actually discusses it, they don't care. I could look at cricket match fix. I could look at the Hansi Cronje match fixing scandal and the aftermath of that. I could look at the Srisanth, an Indian cricketer going to prison for taking bribes. The Pakistan 2011 or 2010 Test series where the whole team were in on a spot fix. People don't care. They claim they do. They get all up in arms when someone gets caught taking bribes or betting scandal. But in reality, they don't care. What's my thought on it? Look, it was a matter of time for baseball to have another scandal. They're still recovering from the steroid scandal. I don't know enough about the scandal itself right now. I will have to research this. I'm going to have to research the Major League Baseball cheating scandal involving the Astros properly, because facts are only just starting to come out. So we're all jumping to conclusions to see they're not the only team to cheat. I can put that out there. They're not the only team to cheat ever. When you have a draft system and things like that and a salary cap system, tanking. Another thing I really hate is teams deliberately losing to get a draft pick. They have to change things like the NHL and the NFL draft to make it a complete lottery, because tanking is deliberately losing, and you can place bets on that. My thought on it doesn't surprise me, but Major League Baseball's got an image problem anyway. They're still recovering from the steroid scandal. They've never fully recovered from that. What's going to come of it? We shall see. I don't think it's going to be positive. I think more is going to come out. We saw with the cricket cheating scandal with the Australian cricket team, the damage that did to the integrity of the sport, and the reaction of fans was really divided. It was a very divisive issue. Fans of other teams are going to go, great, they got caught. And then something's going to come out about their team doing similar. I think more is going to come out because players get traded all the time. And more will come out. We don't have all the facts yet. I didn't even know that this had happened, really, because I've not really been bothered about doing YouTube for a few days. I've been really busy with work, not been feeling very well. So I've taken a few days off, because sometimes you just need to sleep, and I'm finally got a Saturday off so I can enjoy actually relaxing. So I will look into this. I think there was, yeah, from what I've heard, they were mic'd up. There was obviously some communication with an earpiece. That's what we do know, is there was some kind of technological cheating where they were mic'd up. They had signals where they would, like, sound signals where they could know in the field that, this pitch is doing this, or this batter's going to do that. This is how they've changed the batting lineup. I think when it comes to your field setting, cricket and baseball, there's been a lot of allegations against cricket for match fixing and cheating over the years, and they're not going away. And they haven't gone away for years. So I think it's going to be interesting what comes out. When I was playing at school, cricket and football and rugby, when I say football, I mean English football, not American football. When I was playing sports, there were allegations of some of the schools cheating. There was steroids allegations against some of the senior players in the senior team, in the under 18s, taking steroids. So it even happens at school level, not even like academy youth level, when you go into the academies and Premier League rugby and football clubs here in the UK. We're talking actually just decent school level where you can get scouted by professional clubs and professional teams. In Europe, there was cheating going on. The Major League Baseball, the amount of money in it, I'm not surprised. The Astros aren't even a good team, as far as I know. I'm going to have to research this, but I think more comes out. I think other teams get, caught up in this scandal as well. But it's similar to the Patriots and Spygate and Deflategate. Really, it damages the image of a sport that already has an image problem with the steroid scandal. Now, NFL has a problem with players regularly misbehaving, severe criminality, steroids, homophobia, and CTE. So these are big sports that have issues anyway in their PR department. And the PR department must be going, right, let's copy and paste that statement where we have strongly worded things, change a few words. Their PR department must already have a file of copy and paste print. The amount of issues with players and teams misbehaving and doing things in franchise sport in North America is a long list. You will be surprised. How I think England will do in Euro 2020, well, it's played across the whole continent. There's no really home nation advantage for any team because they're playing it across the whole continent, which was a Michel Platini idea, which has been scrapped, by the way, after this Euros. It's not going to happen again. It's going to be interesting. I think Harry Kane's injury, how will that affect Tottenham first, but how will that also affect England? Should Jamie Vardy be recalled because some of the other attacking England players haven't actually got a lot of game time for their clubs because they're younger? There's a big call from fans to get Jamie Vardy back in the side that I've seen online. But he's basically sort of not a big fan of Gareth Southgate's style of football. But we don't really have that quality striker up front because all the other available strikers who could be eligible are either injury prone or have basically said, "No, I'm not playing for you." So I don't know. I honestly don't know what the chances are. It's going to be a fun tournament because it's played all over the continent. So there isn't really one home nation advantage, really. It really mixes it up. But that was a Michel Platini idea, money grab as well by UEFA. And UEFA aren't a very popular organisation with me anyway. A lot of problems with UEFA. I could look into UEFA and some of their brainhead schemes. But yeah, as technology advances as well, cheating gets easier. Not necessarily. You can actually be caught out more as well. As the Astros have found out they've been caught out. It's going to be interesting to look into the Major League Baseball cheating scandal with the Astros. I'm going to have to do a video on it. I don't really follow Major League Baseball. I'm not a fan of baseball, but I've done some videos because obviously it does interest a lot of people. People have asked me to do more baseball videos, and this is a reason to do one. It's not a good reason to do one. I did one over the Major League Baseball coming to London out of just the fact that, hey, they're looking overseas. Why have they waited so long? Why have the other major leagues in North America brought sport here? That kind of thing. I would like to do a Major League Baseball story that's like the history of Major League Baseball. Why is it called Major League Baseball? All the various minor leagues, and that kind of thing, and a positive kind of look at the history of the sport. But now this has come out. It tops off the steroid scandal as well. It is a sport that has struggled to recover its image since the steroid scandal. The amount of players who were cheating came out, but a whole team cheating, that's something different entirely. But I wouldn't be surprised if other teams have had similar cheating schemes in place in order to gain an advantage over the opposition. But you compare it with cricket, and I know a lot of Americans don't really follow cricket, but the same principle applies. There's been a lot of cheating allegations in cricket, match fixing, spot fixing, deliberately losing games, deliberately bowling no balls, deliberately players deliberately running themselves out. The two sports are very similar in the cheating aspects. Now, Major League Baseball hasn't had these allegations of match fixing, as far as I can tell, since the Black Sox? The 1919 World Series or something? For like 100 years? There hasn't been this kind of scandal where it comes where a team is cheating either to win or lose. So, for some reason, baseball's avoided that kind of match-fixing storyline for 100 years. Whereas the sister sport, as I call it, cricket, the sister sport, as I will call it, because baseball does develop from cricket, ironically, has been littered with match-fixing allegations for, well, longer than I've been alive. And that's without technology as well. So there's a lot of things to think about going forward, and I will have to look into that. And I've got a whole weekend to do it, and I've got some time off in February as well. I've got like 10 days off work, so I'll have lots of time to do lots of videos and things like that. Well, the Jacksonville Jaguars have played a lot of games in London because Shahid Khan obviously wanted to buy Wembley and move the team. That's and he said he wouldn't, but it's kind of obvious because the Jaguars can't even get fans in their own stadium in Jacksonville, so they want to bring game over here where most of the stadium is not Jaguars fans, it's the other 31 teams. Anyway, the fact, we have 4 games a year in the NFL that are played in London. I think it's lost its mystique somewhat as it's like a one-off game, like the Winter Classic, for example, in the NHL is a one-off one, and you have the Stadium Series of the Stadium Series games in the NHL. I think it's lost its mystique. It is a money grab, and some teams haven't actually played in London yet as well. So it's interesting that the same teams keep coming back to London where other teams haven't actually been given that opportunity to play in the international series games you get over here. Again, the initial plan was to have a team in London by this point already. But economics have changed, politically things have changed as well. The whole social situation has changed since 2007. A lot has happened in the last 13 years, or 12 and a half years since that first London Series game was played at Wembley. A lot has happened economically and politically and in sport. The attempt by Sahih Khan to buy Wembley didn't succeed. That divided a lot of sports fans, both sides of the Atlantic. I can't speak for American fans with the attempt to buy Wembley by Sahih Khan, the Jacksonville Jaguars owner. I can't speak for American fans, but I can speak for British fans, and a lot of them were not very happy. 95% of people were against it, and a lot of those who were for it were like, well, to be fair, flog the stadium off and give the taxpayer money back. It's a horrible stadium anyway. What people don't realise is a lot of professional sports teams don't actually own the stadiums that they play in or the arenas that they play in. No, they do. I believe the Jaguars own their own stadium because there's been a lot of development around the area of Jacksonville where the stadium is. A lot of money's been pumped in by Sahih Khan. Now, whether they own the stadium or they have a very good lease agreement, I don't know. But I do know that they've pumped hundreds of millions of dollars into development around their stadium. What I do know is only one NRL team owns their stadium, which is the Cronulla Sharks. So if you follow the NRL and Super and Rugby League, only one NRL team owns their stadium. If you look at football, not many teams own their stadiums in English football. A lot of them don't, ironically. Some do, some don't. In the NHL, a lot of teams don't own their stadium, their arenas. That's the issue that the Arizona Coyotes are having right now with the Gila River Arena. Is the lease is not great. I think there's an agreement with the NFL and the Jaguars that when they come to London, that they pay their games as the home team. I think there is an agreement there. I think they have a very decent lease agreement with the arena or the stadium in Jacksonville. But I'm not an expert on the Jacksonville Jaguars and their stadium lease arrangements. I'm not a property rental expert. Even though I've actually been living in a rented flat, I found out that I knew a lot less than I thought I did when it came to property law. And each country has their own agreements, and legal contracts are a pain in the arse. And I have worked for a legal firm, and property law is so complex, it's unreal. Criminal law is pretty simple. Large tracts of civil law are pretty simple, but when it comes to property and finances and libel and all these kind of things where there's contracts and suing, it's a fucking minefield. It's an absolute minefield. There's obviously an agreement with the NFL and White Hart Lane and Tottenham where they play 2 games. That's been signed. There's obviously an agreement with Wembley where they've agreed. Initially it was 4 games and now it's 2. They had an agreement with Twickenham on a short-term lease while White Hart Lane was being built for a couple of years. So the NFL has an agreement with the London stadiums. Oh, where's my phone going off? In question for leases and stuff. That's by the by. Why is my phone going off? I've got to check my phone. Phone's going mad. I'm having WhatsApps and Facebooks and YouTube notifications. This is why I've got to put my phone on silent when I do live streams. Who's messaged me? Someone's messaged me. Pain in the ass. Be reply. Yes. I've got a plumber coming over. So finally, the plumber is coming over that should have come over a month ago. Uh, yeah, I've had a load of leaks in my flat, and I'm finally getting my kitchen sink fixed. Not the other plumbing, just the kitchen sink tap. Let me sort this out. Oh, I've got to do my washing up. Right. Let me sort out my plumber. Cool. So I finally got a plumber. Okay, so this is something that has been really interesting, right? So my plumbing in my flat is a disaster. I've made multiple complaints for 3 months. I've had the local building inspector from the local authority come around saying, this is shit. They've sent them a warning notice. They've said that if improvements aren't made, they're going to take legal action. And suddenly out of nowhere, I get a smoke alarm up there, which you can't see off camera. And I'm now getting a plumber coming to fix my kitchen tap, but nothing else. So he's not going to fix my broken waste pipe. He's not going to fix my buggered plumbing in my bathroom, just the kitchen tap. So they're doing the bare minimum legally. This is what I'm talking about, property law and rental. They're doing the bare minimum. So this is why the Jaguars have got a really, really good lease on their stadium. Really good lease. It's complex as I've got to make some phone calls in a bit and sort legal stuff out. Oh, that's great. That's a fucking pig. Finally, I get a plumber out. It's just taken 3 months. Right. Okay. No. Now NFL wants to play 4 games a year in Mexico City and read the Players Association. Okay. Now, I know they had issue. They wanted to take games to Mexico. They did. I think they've taken 1 game. Oh, would you go away? So my plumber's coming in 5 hours. I've got to do all my washing up in a bit. So when I finish the live stream, I've got to wash all my washing up to make sure the sink is, not pissing water out everywhere, which means there's going to be leaks everywhere. And then he's going to fix my kitchen tap, which should take 10, 15 minutes. The rest of the plumbing's fucked in the building. It's brilliant. So yeah, so the Jaguars obviously are, getting the majority of the London games. They've got a good agreement with the NFL, Wembley, White Hart Lane, formerly and Twickenham in the past, while White Hart Lane was being built. The NFL got an agreement with the London stadiums in question to have 4 games a year, and they've split them 50-50 now between Wembley and Tottenham. The issue with Wembley is the pitch just turns to a mess. And it affects football and rugby league and rugby union and the football and the English football, that is. And the pitch it becomes a mud bath basically. So when you have England international football, so say World Cup or Euros qualifiers, or occasionally rugby union uses Wembley as well, and rugby league uses it at the end of the season for the Challenge Cup. When these other sporting events use the Wembley pitch, it's ripped to pieces. And because Tottenham were also using the Wembley pitch at the time while their stadium was being rebuilt, it became a mess, and hence Twickenham had to step in. So there's issues with the pitch surface in London. The weather is not conducive to playing NFL 4 times in the space of, let's say, a month and a half, 2 months. Well, I think the month of October, I think, is when they may play most of the games. It's not conducive. Plus, we had the Rugby Union World Cup in 2015 take place in the UK. We've had the Rugby League World Cup. We've got the Rugby League World Cup coming up as well. So they want to keep the Wembley surface as good as we've got Euro 2020. That's another reason why White Hart Lane, sort of decided to take some of the abuse. The Mexico City thing is a really interesting thing. You're at altitude. That's something that people fail to realise is, apart from the Denver Broncos, most of the NFL teams aren't at altitude. They're in lower lying areas. Mexico City is quite a high city for altitude. You've got to bear in mind that, the Players Association, there are security concerns in Mexico with the drug cartels, kidnapping, lots of gun crime, which makes the US look pretty safe, actually, ironically, even though USA has like the worst gun crime statistics in the Northern Hemisphere. There's a lot of issues with security and street violence, drug gangs, cartels, other forms of, kidnapping. We've seen in South and Central America, soccer players actually get kidnapped. Their families get kidnapped. That's something that happens a lot. Mexico City is the kidnapping capital of the Western world, the developed world. And in Central America, Mexico is the wealthiest country in Central America. It's now moved to Honduras and Nicaragua, but at one point, Mexico City was the kidnapping capital of the world. Thousands of high-profile people were kidnapped daily, every year. So the players are like, my family's going to come watch this game. Are they going to be safe? Because, yeah, kidnapping gangs. Watch Man on Fire. It's a thing. Personal security is a thing. Mexico City is renowned for kidnappings, for ransom of high-profile politicians, sports stars, their families. Anyone with money, you go there, you're probably going to get robbed at gunpoint. It happens all across Latin America. We've seen it at the F1 in Brazil. F1 teams, drivers, their families, mechanics get robbed at gunpoint. It happens. I don't think a kidnapping cartel are going to go for the NFL player himself, but they will go for the family. It happens, and that's a concern that I think would be with the NFL players going, I don't want to have my family get robbed at gunpoint. Not going to happen. There's also the smog in Mexico City, really bad city for pollution, really bad. And again, you've got to bear in mind you're going to play in a city that has really bad pollution and altitude. That is not healthy. The NFL has to listen to its players. Now, these are highly paid superstars, so we're not going to even debate, is it right or wrong? But if a league wants to do something without the consent of the players, we've seen with La Liga when they wanted to take games to the US between Girona and Barcelona, and the players went, no, we'll go on strike if you do. We'll make sure fixtures go unfulfilled for TV, which would be a pain in the arse for you for reasons. And so the league were like, oh, it's a bad idea. We're still going to try and push ahead. And then the federation were like, you're not playing games outside, you're not playing domestic games outside of Spain. No. The fact the cup final was played in Tangier is technically a Spanish colony, so they're allowed to, because of the North African connection with Spain. US? Nah, not allowed. So the NFL has to be careful. If players don't want to go, they can strike over this. That's the problem. If an employer cannot get its employees on side, because this is technically what the NFL is, it's an employer. The players have a players' union, a trade union, the NFLPA. They can go on strike. That strike could turn to a lockout. That lockout could turn to massive unrest and massive financial implications for all the team owners. So the team owners have to get this right as well. The team owners have to talk to the NFL commissioner, Roger Goodell, and go, actually, if the players aren't happy, we can't sack them all because there's no one to replace them with because we have no minor league. This is where the NFL has a massive problem, where the NHL and the Major League Baseball don't. So if the Major League Baseball and the NHL and the NBA, for example, the players go, now we're going on strike. They have minor league affiliates to replace the players who are striking with. NFL doesn't have that. McGregor Duke. I hope McGregor loses. I'm not a fan of Conor McGregor. A lot of Irishmen hate Conor McGregor passionately. He's not very popular in his home country or his home city in that country either. What's happened recently over with his outside of the MMA octagon, his legal issues. If that was any normal person, they're in prison. I think because of his fame and a very good lawyer, he's not. I think, I don't think. I hope he doesn't win. I hope he gets the living crap kicked out of him, to be brutally honest. The fame's gone to his head. I also think brain damage has gone to his head as well. I don't think he's got any brains left. I don't think he had any to begin with. When you see someone who's come from a very poor a working class background, who's made it as a sports star, who's done it the hard way, which McGregor has. I'm not gonna lie, he's a trained plumber, so he's got a trade skill. He's a tradesman by training. He's a plumber. When you see someone who's come from struggling to make a living, and he's done it the hard way, fine. That's a Cinderella story. That's great. You make the film about that. What's now transpired is he's I think he's been badly advised by the people around him. I do. I think his team have badly advised him in the direction he should go. I think he should have retired by now anyway, long before the Mayweather fight. The Mayweather fight really was just embarrassment. And then continuing on, I do think, I hope he loses for the health of MMA, not just UFC, but Bellator and all the other promotions. I hope he loses, because if he wins, it has rewarded all his bad behavior that has damaged the image of a sport that already has an image problem further. But it's like Mike Tyson. He went to prison for sexual assault and he became a world champion again, and boxing didn't seem to care. So what do I know? But I have friends who do various like mixed martial arts. I work with some one of the lads I work with. He's a trainer in his other job. He trains fighters as a side income, and I think it is a sport that does have an image problem. Unfortunately, there are some sports stars who do MMA who are gentlemen and proper ladies away from the octagon, and there are some that really do give the sport that black image, that dark image that makes it hard to sell. I hope Duke wins. I hope he knocks him clean out. Really do. Because McGregor is the Habib situation, the Mayweather farce, his actions with the assault in the pub. His actions over the last 4 or 5 years have really damaged the image of a sport that has an image problem. And he's not the only fighter in MMA to do these things and have this checkered history away from the sport, actually, in public. He's not the only one to have bizarre behaviour, is the best way to describe it, but he's showing signs of brain damage, I can tell you that. His frontal lobe clearly must be exceptionally battered. He doesn't come across as a very humble human being. Not at all. I think, I don't know. What do I know, eh? Antonio Brown has signed $1 million contract for box 2 fights. I mean, that's a farce in itself. I think now it's just become farcical. The whole fighting blood sports, as they're called, the martial arts have started to become farcical. Hollywood's helped with that, with all the film franchises that have been done over the years. I mean, the Van Damme ones were brilliant, but and Chuck Norris, but some of the, I think, the media have helped turn sports that actually did have some pretty gentlemanly figures outside the ring or outside the octagon into just farcical. And the image of some of these sports has become farcical and negative. And I've had a lot of discussions about boxing and MMA and kickboxing and Muay Thai and all these variety of combat sports, and unfortunately the image of them is not what it should be, of discipline and structure. It's turned into the greed and the money in it, and the negativity surrounding these sports is, damn it, well, we could discuss these sports that were originally designed to create discipline and structure in a man's life originally. And now women have broken down that barrier and are also becoming superstars in these sports in their own right, which is really great to see. But at the same time, you look at the undercards, you actually look at how much the undercards are getting paid for these big fights. So you've got the big fight, let's say you've got Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder, or you've got McGregor and Duke. You look at the undercards and how much their prize purses are. They're not getting paid a lot. They're struggling to get by. Look, Antonio Brown, I think, has been badly advised as well. I think is it Odell Beckham Jr. as well is in the headlines for some antics off the field. Clearly, the debate between concussion and mental health issues is clearly still relevant. The NFL, the CTE lawsuit. Antonio Brown's behaviour over the last 18 months has been absolutely bizarre. Absolutely bizarre. I'm not a massive NFL fan, but you can tell when someone is damaging. Oh yeah, Odell. I think he I'm not a massive NFL fan. I used to watch it, not religiously, but I used to have a passing interest, and I hope the Packers and the Cardinals did well, teams that I follow. But this is a sport that has players and owners committing criminal acts. So the whole Kraft situation with the prostitution sting, and Antonio Brown and Odell Beckham Jr. Some of their antics are just bizarre. there is a problem with the NFL and player misbehaviour, and Roger Goodell has given so many statements about code of conduct and we're going to clean up the sport and the image, and then Michael Vick dogfighting ring still, Ben Roethlisberger, all the allegations against him still. Some of these things aren't going away. But when like someone like Kaepernick comes out and discusses, racial prejudice or a social issue, he gets thrown under the bus. But these players can constantly misbehave regularly and still keep their jobs. I do not understand the NFL's thinking. There is clearly an issue with this organization and the culture within it. And it's not going away. It's not, because we're still discussing these problems. Now, Antonio Brown, we can say he's definitely had concussion. He's definitely had a severe brain injury, because you can see a change in his personality. Pre-concussions, post-concussions. And for all those who deny that CTE is a thing and that brain injuries can alter a person's personality, look at the amount of athletes and people. You just have to look and read about military injuries where shrapnel and bullets and you read how people have changed after having a traumatic event. The evidence has been there for 2,000-3,000 years. I'm not gonna lie. I love my history, and you know that I have a second channel. I have my books, and you've seen that in previous videos when I was living in the old house. And if you watch some of my old videos, you see books everywhere. I've got books down there. I've got books over there. I've got books in my bedroom. So there is written evidence of like Spike Milligan. If you don't know who Spike Milligan is, he's a British comedian and an actor. Fortunately, he's now since passed away. But if you watch the original Three Musketeers films, he plays a nutty old tailor whose wife falls in love with D'Artagnan. Spike Milligan was a soldier in World War II. He was an artillery officer. And he was wounded in the Italian campaign in, I think, the early 1944. And he took a piece of shrapnel to the head. He then, in later life, suffered from schizophrenia. Pre-1944, he had shown no signs of mental health issues. Post-injury in the battlefield to the brain, personality changed. He was a very creative actor, very creative comedian, but post-brain injury, and this is before we had all the research on it, his personality changed, and he was diagnosed later on with, I think, bipolar and schizophrenia. And he went lengthy periods of being completely mentally ill, where he was insane. He was certified insane. So read about Spike Milligan. There's your link. There's your Antonio Brown. He's had a brain injury. He's clearly damaged his brain post just a normal concussion. Clearly, he's damaged the frontal lobe. He's showing erratic signs of mental health issues, possibly bipolar. He could be bipolar anyway. And this is the debate that I've been having for 3 years on this channel is player welfare and health. And I've actually mentioned mental health issues. I'm going to do a video again on mental health and substance abuse in sport, because it's getting to the point now where regularly players are coming out with substance abuse and mental health problems, and no one, and the fans just go, "Oh, it's sad. Oh, look at that player. He's gone downhill," and it's a thing. It's not going away. More and more players are coming out post-retirement or even in their careers going, "I have an issue with substance abuse, alcohol, gambling, depression." I'm not, and it's not just in American football or the NHL or whatever. It's in even sports like snooker. Players are coming out going, "I'm struggling with alcoholism." Alex Higgins, check him out, snooker player from the 70s, massive alcoholic. And yeah, the Colin Kaepernick problem. Yeah, he made a political protest at the side of the field. Yeah, I know that. Other players joined in. It did put pressure on owners. Some owners were in favour of what Kaepernick, others were against. The NFL, Roger Goodell, basically he took them to court, about unfair dismissal, not being allowed a chance of employment in his chosen field, etc., etc. Kaepernick's a very well educated, intelligent guy. Unfortunately, America at the moment is a very divided nation when it comes to society, and the UK and Europe is very similar as well. Sport mirrors the society that the sport is played in. sport mirrors the society. Sport is a mirror of the society that is played in. We're seeing a rise in racism in Europe at football matches and other sports as well. We've seen it in cricket, we've seen it in rugby league. It happens. Same in Australia. US and Canada, was it JT Brown, NHL player, instead of taking a knee, did the Black Panther salute. Death threats online. This is after Kaepernick. I did a video on that as well. That's an older video. I had some really racist American, bigoted, limited intelligence, couldn't spell even American words, which are always misspelled to English people anyway. Give me a load of abuse. And I was just like, oh, go away. Go away. 49ers Packers. I'm a Packers fan, so I sold the 49ers. I'm going for Packers to win. Chiefs, Titans, Kansas. Ooh. Now, I'm going with the Chiefs. I'm going with the Packers against the 49ers by 7 points. And Chiefs, Titans, this is going to be a close one. It's going to come down to offense. Defensively, both teams are disastrous. So I'm going with the Chiefs by a field goal. I have no idea how I'm making this all up. I'm just making it up. I do not do predictions. Green Bay Chiefs to win the Super Bowl. I'm going for the Green Bay Packers to win the Super Bowl. If that's what you predict, but we're all wrong. It's going to be the 49ers Titans, and we're all wrong. There you go. I don't do sporting predictions. If I did, I would be minted. I would be having links to organised crime, and I'll be fixing every game. Because the only way you can predict results accurately is if you know the result beforehand. And that is something I've discussed as well, is match fixing in sport and corruption in sport. I've done videos on that. Not as many as I think I should. Aaron Rodgers has got Danica Patrick, and I think many men would be happy with a petrol head like Danica Patrick as your girlfriend, because she can fix your car for you, or your motorcycle, or your speedboat, or your lawnmower. Just Danica Patrick is a petrol head. And I think an underrated racing driver as well. I think she's taken a lot of flack in her career for being a woman, and told she shouldn't make it. And she won an IndyCar race. So I respect Danica Patrick for what she's achieved within motorsport for women. I really do. I think some of the knuckle draggers who didn't want her in NASCAR, didn't want her in IndyCar, really don't know what they're talking about, because she did better than most of the men. Apart from the very, 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 very best. That's a. I can't allow that one. I'm afraid that's a naughty one, because if I allow that comment, YouTube will give me an earful by email going, "You allowed an abusive comment." Can't allow that one. I understand she could fix a paraplegics, but we're not going to I'm not going to post that. Sorry, but this is a PG channel for the most part. I do swear occasionally, but I've got the copper regulations. I've got to sort of comply by not swearing too much. So if I allow that, we're in trouble. And I've put a few little F-bombs in here, but I've signed up for this is not designed for kids, but that doesn't mean kids aren't going to watch my channel. And if you put that, they go, "What's a paraplegic?" Do you have to explain how someone becomes disabled from the neck down, and then all that. I would normally allow that, but now that the copper thing keeps coming up with the Child Online Protection Regulation Act, or whatever it is, the US federal government, and you got to comply by it. Unfortunately, the channel's got to become a little bit more PG on live stream than it was a month or. Oh, no, I get it's a joke, but a month ago, yeah, I'd have allowed that. But unfortunately, I've now had to set both channels up to meet the copper regulations. Even though I'm in the UK, you got to be careful, because YouTube can go, "We're not going to monetize you," and we're getting close to monetization target. So yeah, we've had a lot of growth on the channel, and we're getting close to that monetization target. And if we do get monetized and that comes up, I'm in a bit of trouble. I've got to go, "I'm sorry, YouTube, I can't control my users." And then comments get blocked, and then sections get taken away. And this is a sports debate channel. We're debating sport here, and we can look at Danica Patrick's career in IndyCar and NASCAR, and how many races she raced, and her average finishing position and things like that. But yeah, I get why you made the joke, because she could, yeah, definitely do that. If only she had the magic mouth. She got a pretty mouth. But no, Aaron Rodgers is a damn good quarterback. And he already has got a Super Bowl. I think he wants another one. The Green Bay Packers, look at the history. The Lombardi Trophy, their old coach. There you go. So I like the Green Bay Packers. And they're the smallest, Green Bay is the smallest city in the US to have a major league franchise. Smaller than Buffalo. That's another little tidbit. Lambeau Field, Siberia. Green Bay is the smallest city in the US to have a major league franchise. I think it's actually the smallest city in North America to have a major league franchise as well, if I'm not mistaken. I think it is smaller than Winnipeg, Calgary, and Edmonton. So I think actually Green Bay actually is the smallest city to have a major league franchise in North America. Where am I from? I'm from the UK, from the southeast of the UK. So not actually London, but just outside. I think I'm about 20 miles away from London to the west. We don't all live in London in the UK. It's a misnomer. Everyone thinks we all live in London. We don't. Not all of us like London either. I don't know who's in the halftime show, but it cannot be as bad as last year where I watched 30 seconds and went, sod it, I'm going to put the NHL playoffs, the NHL back on and watch a Jets game. I was around my friend's house and he'd smoked a bit of the devil's lettuce and had fallen asleep. So I just took over the TV and Twitter was coming up and people were complaining about the NFL Super Bowl being the worst Super Bowl ever. And I watched 2.5 minutes of actual play and I watched about 30 seconds of Maroon 5 and I was like, no, done. That was the least I've watched of a Super Bowl in 16 years. I'm not even sure if I'll watch the Super Bowl this year. I'm not even sure I'll watch the Super Bowl this year. I've got to the point now with certain sports where I'm like, I know I should cover them. I know I should watch them, but I'm just like, I don't have the energy to watch that. I've lost interest in some sports majorly. There are other sports that I will watch, but how hard is it to get tickets? I don't know. My friend Ollie went to, I think, 4 straight years of every game in London and he had to stop going because it got too expensive. And he's a diehard Steelers fan. And he had to basically go, it's getting too expensive now to go to Wembley and Twickenham to watch the games. And he was going, I think he went every year for, I think, 4 or 5 years. He was on the telly dressed as a penguin on CBS or whoever had or NBC, whoever had the TV rights for the American feed. He was interviewed by the woman and with his mates, all dressed as penguins. They always go in fancy dress. And I asked him, because he's an accountant, he has a good job. He has an accountant for one of the big supermarkets in the UK. He's a business accountant for him. And I asked him, how expensive is it, guys? It's getting to the point now where even though I earn silly money, I've got a mortgage to pay, a car to pay for, bills, I can't afford to go. And he's earning good money. He's the target audience for the NFL, and he's going, I can't afford it. And he went to how many games? It's 4 games a year. It used to be 3. When they first did the first 4 game NFL London season, they did 4 games in London. He went to that one till I think about 2 years ago. So he went about 4 or 5 years worth. So that's about 20 odd NFL games in London. He goes, I can't afford to do it anymore. So that tells you how expensive it is. If a local who doesn't have to factor in hotel, flights, who lives similar distance from London as I do. I mean, I've moved from the old town I used to live into a new town, but I'm still in the same geographical area. I'm just 8 miles up the road. So he lives similar distance from London as I do. He's got a better disposable income than I do. Okay, so factor that in. Okay, he's quite well off. Goes regularly. Last couple of years, I can't afford it. That tells you how much it is. He's on, I think his salary is about, is it 80,000, 90,000 pounds a year? Something like that. He's on 80 to 90 grand a year, pounds. So that's about $110,000 a year. He's on. That's his salary. Now, can't afford to go. Cannot afford to go. So if the average Super Bowl ticket's $4,500, you work out how much it is to go to watch a game at Wembley in the London series. Bearing in mind, you've got to factor in your flight. your hotel, your transport from your hotel to Wembley or to White Hart Lane. So they're both in North West London. So they're not in Central London. They're both outside Central London. Okay, you've got to factor your transport, food and drink, which are going to be overpriced anyway because they jack the prices up for these events. It's already like £10 for a burger and a beer or something at White Hart Lane. Minimum £12 for like a small burger and a beer. So what you would class as a child's portion in America, which would be a normal portion here because we're not all obese. Because American sizes are stupidly massive. Because a small would be an extra large here. No, I'm not joking. A small Pepsi, small Coke here is about that big. In America, it's that big. So, yeah, you've got factor in your food and drink, and then you transport back. So, be it the bus, taxi, minicab, Uber, whatever you got to use. And then however long you're staying in London for, outside London if you have to, because it could be cheaper, and you'll stay, and then you'll flight back. So if you're an American and you're coming over here, not just for the game, but for, let's say, a weekend break or maybe a week, you've got to factor in all your costs. It's expensive. If he is saying to me, and he's got a good salary, he's only going for the game, it's too expensive to go. If it's pricing out the locals, who it's aimed at, that tells you how much the ticket price is. There you go. I don't know how hard it is to get tickets, but I know it's expensive. And a lot of people have complained that the price of these tickets is going up. It's not as cheap as you think. Wembley Stadium, the ticket pricing for Wembley at least, a lot of people have criticised Wembley for a lot of because they set the ticket prices and they have an agreement with the various sports that use Wembley. So English football, European football, the NFL, rugby league, rugby union, concerts. You have a thing called Club Wembley that has been regularly criticised since 2007, and the ticket prices are much higher than an equivalent game because I think certain rugby union teams have played home games at Wembley in the regular league season, and we've seen the last two Challenge Cups have record low crowds since World War II. 2 years ago, it was the lowest ever. Last year was the second lowest, and crowds have been declining for about 6 years at the Challenge Cup final in rugby league. That's a big event over here in the UK when it comes to domestic sport. So it's and in rugby league, it's one of the trophies as a player you want to win. It's one of the oldest continuous trophies in existence. It's a trophy you want to win as a player in that chosen sport. Crowd numbers have been down. Club Wembley, where you buy the tickets from, I think, although they are the licensed retailers, they might allow the NFL or the teams in general speak to sell the tickets on Club Wembley's behalf, have been regularly criticised for ticket prices for several years by fans of a variety of sports, not just English football, but a variety of sports have criticised the ticket prices at Wembley anyway. And so I don't know, but I do know that it is expensive. It has gone up in price. And if a local, the target fan base that they're targeting, cannot afford to go, that just tells you how expensive it is. And who I think will win the Super Bowl? I'm still going for Green Bay at this current time, but we haven't played the semi-final games yet. And £4,000 for a ticket, yeah, that's what these big finals go for now. Unless you're a neutral who buys your ticket well in advance of, let's say, a knockout competition getting to that stage. If you buy your ticket, it's dirt cheap because no one knows it's going to be in it. It's worthless. You don't know if it's going to be Brazil, Argentina in a World Cup final, for example, which would be epic. Or England making a World Cup final, the ticket price will go through the roof. But we saw with the Champions League and Europa League finals last season, the ticket price go to similar. We're talking between £3,000 and £9,000 for the final tickets there. Yeah, average fans get priced out. Too many corporate seats. Again, Wembley has an issue with that. And White Hart Lane now has an issue with that as well. Lots of empty seats at some of these new stadiums. They've got to pay them off. So you've got paid attendance and actual attendance. And yeah, and I haven't been. I mean, the last time I went to an ice hockey game was September, so I haven't been to a sporting event for a while. I haven't been to a sporting event this year, even though we're only 2.5 weeks in. But I haven't been to a sporting event for about 3-4 months. And even then, at lower levels, at lower standard, professional, but still lower standard, it still racks up over a year. I must have spent, as a hockey fan, since 2013, at least £6,500 going to watch ice hockey in this country. and those tickets are cheap. So you add them all up, it gets expensive. I've done the away days where you've got to factor in transport, petrol for the car, gasoline if you're American, fuel costs, parking if you've got to pay for parking, food, drink, all that. So transport costs if you've got to take a train. Me and my friend went from where we live now to London to watch an ice hockey game. And we had to get one train, two trains, three underground. We had to get several underground trains and a couple of mainline trains to get where we had to go. The game wasn't till 6 in the evening. We left at midday to get there to have a bite to eat to then get to the arena. We didn't get home till 11:30 at night. So it's a long day as well. So it's a tiring day. The fact that this is what sports team owners don't realise fans go through to get to games. And I live half-hour train journey outside central London. I used to live 50 minutes. Now I live half hour. So I've moved that a little bit closer, transport-wise at least. Even then, going all around London, walking around, changing trains and tube, ticket price, it adds up. And some teams have worse financial situations than others and have to have prices slightly higher to break even or to make a small profit compared to their rivals. As Milton Keynes Lightning, a ticket for a child is £7, whereas if you go to Bracknell Bees, it's £4. You see what I mean? Some teams have perilous financial situations away from actually the playing side of things. They've got to pay the staff. They've got to pay the players. They've got to pay the arena staff. They've got to pay towards the payment of the arena staff. They may not own the arena. They may rent it. And a lot of these teams rent their arena space or their stadiums. So they've got to have a lease agreement where they have to make money and then they have to pay the rental for the time. It is a thing. I've been to some big sporting events here in the UK over the years. I've enjoyed every single one of them I've been to. Atmosphere is something, but when you go to a sporting event and there is a lot of empty seats and the atmosphere is lacking, I've been a few of them. No, don't get me wrong. I love watching my ice hockey. I love watching my rugby. I play rugby as well. But when you're seeing a grandstand or an arena where a third of it's empty or half of it's empty, that really sucks. It does suck. But I like watching on TV as well because you can just turn it up, turn it down. But just watch it in the background with some commentary. I do like watching. I like watching on the laptop as well. And arena atmosphere is something that you don't get on the TV. I will admit, you do not get that on the TV. You don't get especially an older stadium or arena where the stand actually shakes when they're celebrating and the noise. You don't necessarily get that. The commentators will always say the atmosphere here is much different than what you get on the TV. You do miss out on that, but at the same time, you're in the comfort of your home. It's warm. It's dry. We don't have to travel for hours on end. And this is where sports team owners and leagues and sports organisers don't quite necessarily take in consideration how long some of these fans have to travel. I think Plymouth, Carlisle, I think last weekend was the longest away day of that weekend. That's 8 or 9 hours on by road. I think it's 11 hours by train. It's basically half a day. Half a day you have to travel to watch your team play, and you might have to travel overnight, and then you have to get back down again. In the middle of winter in this country, with the rain we've had, a lot of heavy rain, and up in the north of the UK we've had some snow as well, with changeable weather conditions, with some pretty shoddy infrastructure along the way. That's a lot of travelling, and the team owners don't, and the league organisers don't take this into consideration. They really don't. If they do, they should do more to assist the average fan in their travelling to games. And we're talking about the FA Cup having lower than last year's attendance, lots of empty seats, and some stadiums being 3/4 empty. Cardiff, Carlisle only having 5,000 people in a 30,000 seater stadium. That tells you something. My favourite NHL team is the Winnipeg Jets, and then my second favourite is the Arizona Coyotes, the former Jets. So that tells you what you need to know about there. Thursday night National Cup game was great atmosphere. Look, I mean, when you have like a great atmosphere, it does help. Even if the team's winning or losing, it doesn't matter. When you have a good atmosphere and a passionate fan base, that makes a sport. A sport without fans is not a sport; it's a hobby played by enthusiasts. That's my view on things. When a sport has a declining fan base, then it just becomes hobbyists playing a game because they're enthusiastic about it. And this is something again that the ECB with cricket with the 100, they're really misfiring here. It keeps coming up on my Facebook and Twitter, get into the 100, get into the 100. And from what I'm getting, they want to attract new fans. They're pissing off all the existing fans who then don't want to watch cricket. And that is an unintended side effect. I don't think the ECB has quite realised what they're doing. The Astros cheating in Major League Baseball. Fans are going to go, right, if one team's doing it, they're all doing it. We now know that these games are not necessarily what we're watching. The results are either predetermined or a team is deliberately cheating. So either gain advantage or deliberately lose for whatever reason. We're switching off. We've seen after every single match fixing scandal in European football and South American football, crowd numbers have dropped. We are looking at domestic cup competitions like the FA Cup and the Challenge Cup. So football and rugby league here in the UK, two of the oldest continuous trophies to play for, some of the most historical trophies that a professional sportsman in their field wants to win. Even if they don't never played in that country before. A lot of European players said when I was growing up, I used to love watching the FA Cup and the League Cup. The League Cup now is so devalued that no one really wants to play in it. Fans don't want to watch it. And the FA Cup crowd numbers are down for the last 3 seasons at least. Lots of empty seats, lack of atmosphere. Liverpool Everton was always going to be a sellout. Arsenal Leeds was always going to be a sellout, but some of the crowd numbers were really disappointing. And when you have that lack of atmosphere and the lack of fans turning up, it just becomes enthusiasts taking part in a hobby, not a sport. A sport without fans is just a bunch of hobbyists who are very enthusiastic about a game. That's something that happens, and it's not good. Empty seats look also really, really shit for live TV as well. Empty seats look really bad for live broadcasts, really bad, and that is something else that they have to consider. It's the empty seats, and with the amount of sport now being shown on television, be it subscription or free to wear, or even on the internet, free streaming or paid streaming. I've seen so many empty seats at games in the NRL, the Super League, the FA Cup, the League Cup, ice hockey. So the NHL, I've seen a lot of empty seats at certain teams. Other teams have actually increased their crowd numbers. Other teams like Ottawa, the Ottawa Senators are just a disaster. Fishing in London, I wouldn't advise it. The River Thames, which I actually live right on, I actually live on the Thames. So if I do a video where I go out and about, I live. What is it? I can actually see the bridge from my window. If I stick my head up, I can see the bridge from Taplow, which is in Buckinghamshire, to Maidenhead, which is in Berkshire. And I'm literally 150 metres from the River Thames. So, yeah, I'm a stone's throw from the River Thames. Fishing isn't really done anymore. People don't really fish on the Thames as much as they used to. There are some tributaries and there are some rivers flowing into the Thames that still have good fish numbers, but it's not. We have fishing ponds over here. It's a different. I discussed this with hunting and fishing and things on a previous live stream the other week. We got discussing hunting and fishing and hunting for sport and hunting for food. The laws governing fishing here, you have to put the fish back. You can't keep them. And I wouldn't say the River Thames at this point anyway, in the second half of the Thames, where there's lots of locks, there's lots of man-made channeling, because behind me, so this wall, I look out of that window and I go down the road half a mile, half a kilometre, there's the Jubilee River, which is a flood defence. Now, fish do live in these things. There's several flood canals where they're like the LA River, where all the canals go into the LA River. We have flood defences around where I live because Windsor Castle is about 8 miles that way. The Queen lives there. There's lots of flood defences in this area because of the high population, the urbanisation, and the fact that this area regularly floods. And we've had some bad floods. 2013, just type in the 2013 Thames flooding. Where I'm living now was underwater. Now I'm on the third story of a building, but my basement, the basement floor, flooded out. All the buildings that I live by the main road into London. All this was underwater. And actually, yesterday morning when I woke up, it was actually underwater because of the heavy rain. I was lucky to be able to get out of my parking to go to work. The roads were flooded. We're talking 3-4 foot. The River Thames has risen. So, beginning of the week, they had a little dry spell, and the Thames dropped to normal winter levels. There's another little river that flows into the Thames about 2-3 miles that direction from where I live, so to the south. And it had been high in November and December. It'd been pretty high. It'd been in flood. Just the farmland, started to get really boggy. You could see the saturation, and it dropped down to normal level in one night, 24 hours, because we had a lot of heavy rain for a lengthy for about a day. One day, 24 hours, it rose 7 foot. 7 foot. Yeah. So I wouldn't advise fishing on the Thames this time of year. You find yourself, I'm underwater. Also with things like pollution and urbanisation and all these flood defences getting built, it does affect fish's breeding patterns. I know angling is a big thing, sports fishing is a big thing. It became really big over here in the early 90s, but it's not really it's still popular. People do it as a hobby, fishing as a hobby. I know a lot of work colleagues of mine do go fishing over the weekend. They book a week off and go fishing. We do have some things called fishing ponds where they're specialised lakes that are set aside for this precise purpose, where you can go and fish. And the animals there are protected. You can't eat them. You can't take them out and eat them. They are protected. And there are also wildlife preserves with birds and frogs and other amphibians and other mammals. They're all protected. They're protected areas where you can fish, but you've got to put the fish back. And all the animals in there, you can't shoot them and take them home or fish them out, take them home. You have to leave them where they are, not disturbed. You've got to take your rubbish with you as well. So there's specialised areas where you can fish in this country. There are some rivers where you can go fishing and go angling. You need a permit. There are some big fishing competitions. Yes, they do exist, but they're not as well advertised as they were 25 years ago. They used to be televised as well. They're not televised as much as they were. There might be the occasional TV station on subscription TV that might pick it up on cable or satellite TV, but it's not as popular as what it was 25 years ago. Barry Hearn and Eddie Hearn, the boxing promoters, they are big into fishing, especially Barry Hearn. He's really big into fishing. He came up with the idea of the Angling Times and really pushing televised fishing tournaments. He made a lot of money out of it. But right now, people aren't really watching that kind of thing. It's not something that socially, the younger generations, those who are affluent, really want to spend their hard-earned cash watching as a sport. It's still there. There are still hobbyists who do it. There are still professional anglers who go out professionally doing what they're doing. And Jeremy Wade, River Monsters, and Robson Green with his extreme sea fishing. There is a market there. There are fans there for that kind of extreme fishing. But it's not as popular over this side of the Atlantic than it is in North America. Plus, a lot of the rivers here have gone through a lot of pollution. We're a very small country land size, and there's a lot of people living on top of each other. As I've said in previous live streams, there's a reason why London and the Southeast have a lot of professional sports teams. There's a reason why the Northwest has a lot of professional sports teams. They're big areas of population, the Midlands as well, so Birmingham, Manchester, Liverpool, London, and all the cities and towns in between that stretch, Yorkshire as well, South Yorkshire, Lancashire. A lot of, if you type in these things on Wikipedia or on Google Maps, this is the main population centres of the UK. South Wales, parts of the West Country, there's some big urban areas there. So there's a lot of concentration of people in a very small space. They're all along all the major rivers have big urban concentrations. Too much disturbance, too much pollution. There's not enough wilderness left in the UK. Whereas in North America, you've got the Rocky Mountains, you've got the Appalachians, you've got the Great Plains, you've got all these spaces where no one lives for 100, 200 miles. You might see one person, you might see one gas station, you might see one small incorporated settlement for 100 miles. Whereas over here, you're lucky to go 5 miles up passing a village or a town until you get to some of the more upland areas like the Highlands or Dartmoor or the Peak District. You might go 2 miles, you're in the next town. So we're really on top of each other in the sense that all our towns, there's a reason why London has so many professional soccer teams, football teams. So many. There's a reason why Greater Manchester, Liverpool, and that part of the Northwest, loads of professional sports teams. You look at South Yorkshire, loads of professional sports teams in a variety of sports. And then you get to the more rural areas, and there's one team professional like Carlisle. And then there's nothing for about 20, 30 miles. It's just how it is, I think, socially as well, and where people live. A lot of people in this country live by rivers in big towns and cities. Lots of pollution, lots of disturbance that will keep the fish away. Lots of noise, lots of vibrations. Fish are very skittish animals. They tend to avoid, vibrations disturb them. Whereas North America, lots of open wilderness, lots more space. Outside the big urban areas, it's just wilderness, really. And wildlife can really do its thing without being disturbed as much. I think that's another big social difference and geographical difference is you have a lot more space. You have a similar population density, but a lot more space. We nearly have 70, 75 million people living on these little rocky islands in the North Atlantic. You have nearly 400 million people living in an entire continent. You can see the population distribution. We are very on top of each other. The lowland belt from Edinburgh to Glasgow in Scotland really developed, and the east coast of Scotland, lots of towns and cities. As I say, so we're all on top of each other. But in America, you've got a few areas like the New York area, the Eastern Seaboard, LA, Southern California, Seattle and Portland and things like that, Chicago and Detroit and those areas, some parts of Texas, and then it's just wilderness. There's lots of space and wilderness areas in every state. Even the state of Rhode Island has wilderness. There are parts of Rhode Island, one of the smallest states the smallest state of the US, that are countryside and rural and very underpopulated. Then you go to Vermont and there's no one there. And that's one of the smallest states, and it is literally just Appalachians and woodland. So it does affect how, someone has broken down on the roundabout, on the major road junction outside my flat, and a big HGV is trying to, oh dear, what a place to break down. Oh my. Something really funny. People can't drive, as we found out, and someone has decided to break down, quite literally, at the most dangerous point on a road junction. It's hilarious. It's not even sport, but it's funny because watching people try and avoid a possible accident is really funny because they're doing a really bad job. And oh dear. And it's a Toyota as well. Normally a very reliable car. It's decided to take a dump coming off a roundabout. Oh dear. So a major road junction, all mucked up. But back to fishing. Big thing. I'll try, but if you look, I don't know if you can see. I think it might be a bit on the bright side, but down there, where I'm pointing, there's a car, and it's decided to basically break down coming off a busy junction. And this road is, if you take out what you would call the highways in motorways here in the UK, the highways in the US, this is a major road going from London to the west of England and South Wales. They've decided to not only break down, but stay in their vehicle and not put a warning triangle out. So many violations there. When you break down, you are told to get out your vehicle and walk to the side of the road, stay safe, and put your warning triangle out. Hasn't done that. And this is like basically one of the busiest non-motorways in the UK is the A4. That's where I live. It's one of the busiest roads into London and out of London to Bristol, which is in the west of England, and South Wales. It's one of the busiest roads in the country that isn't a motorway. They've broken down it. Oh, she almost got sideswiped. Oh, this is bad. So this is a Saturday, so this is not a working day. Oh, it is a working day for some people. But if I stick the camera there and just down there on one of the busiest roads in the UK, and the police have just gone past and done nothing. Yeah, this is the view out my window every morning. And the local football club is about a mile that way. And the Slough Jets ice hockey team is about 5 miles that way. And she's broken down there, right on the junction. And she's made no attempt to try and restart the car. She's made no attempt to get out the car. She's made no attempt to put the warning triangle out. And she's now causing traffic chaos because people are having to go around the roundabout and they can't go anywhere. And how a breakdown truck is going to pick her up, I have no idea. No idea. Thing is, I'm a trained mechanic. Should I go out and help? Or do I point and laugh? I am a trained mechanic. This is so funny. I trained as a mechanic when I was a teenager, early 20s. And she's stuck there. Do I go out and help? Or do I stay on live stream and point and laugh? This is the thing. So basically, with the hope the glare isn't too bad, but where I'm pointing, she's down there. And I don't know what the... Yeah, I think there's a bit too much glare, but she's behind me over there. I think the sunlight's too bad. I think we've got a bit of glare. Oh, there's a bus! Oh, there's a bus! Now, I'm hoping you can see the bus. The bus, and the big expensive Volvo. If you look at the bus, look at that bus. That's about 25 ton worth of big vehicle. She is really... And she's nowhere near the curb as well. She's really fucked up there. And then we've got commercial... so, yeah. Yeah, you saw the bus. If she's still there when I finish live stream, I'm gonna do a video on the moron. I might actually have to go down and help because I am a trained mechanic and I feel really bad. She's not attempting to move that vehicle. Oh no, my plumber's not coming for another 3 hours. So my plumber's Asian. He's from India. It's fine. He's not coming for another 3 hours. But she has broken down in like a really dangerous position. But this is the problem with modern cars. Too many electrics and they shut the engine off. And this is what you find with motorsport. All the electrics now. That's where most of the breakdowns happen in F1 and IndyCar and NASCAR, not so much because there's less tech on them. But if you look at touring cars, rally cars, MotoGP, F1, IndyCar, so many electrics on these motorsport vehicles now. And when they go wrong, it's not because the pistons failed or suspensions failed. It's because the electrics have gone wrong. 9 times out of 10, it's an electrical failure that controls the clutch, that controls the hybrid, that controls the boost. Too many electrics. And when they fail, oh dear. Oh no, the guy behind her thinks she's in traffic. That's brilliant. The guy behind her thinks she's part of the traffic jam. Oh, that's so dangerous. So dangerous. I've got to get petrol, gasoline. I've got to fill up at some point today or tomorrow. Oh no, now she was on the phone. The entire time she was parked up, she was on the phone. She wasn't broken down at all. She was on the phone. She's got moving now. Oh my God. The entire time she had her hazards on, she hadn't broken down at all. She was on the phone. Automatically should be banned from driving. Sorry. I have no sympathy for... She almost caused 5 or 6 accidents in the last 10 minutes. Yeah. Right, okay. She was on the phone the entire time. I've literally just watched her put her phone down and start... No, she was actually a middle-aged woman. She put the sun visor up because our steering wheel was on the other side than you would be in the US. Our steering wheel was on this side, your steering wheel was on that side of the car. She put the sun visor up because the sun obviously comes from the south and my window faces north. She put the sun visor... And she's on the phone! She's on the phone! Unbelievable. She nearly caused 5, 6 accidents there. That's just... unbelievable. See, my old house where I used to live, I was near the main road, which is another major A road that comes off the A4. It's the A3095. So do your geography, which is a road from Maidenhead, where I basically live, to Bracknell, where I used to live. So 8 miles down the road. You could hear the traffic, couldn't see the traffic because I'm in a little housing estate, posh houses. And even in off the main road, people would park up, put their phone. Unbelievable. But never on a jump. I've never seen that on a major trunk road before, ever. I've heard of it, but oh my God. But now I have it on camera. That's brilliant. So, and the thing is, the police went the other way. The police thought she had broken down. Right, she's phoning the AA, it's fine. We'll go up. If someone reports her is still there, we'll come back. Unbelievable. Happy with how long? Okay, right. Back to sport. Good evening, Mr. Avery. I understand it's still nighttime in British Columbia, in Vancouver. Line, he has scored. His goal scoring isn't as high as it could be, but his assists, his all-round play is a lot better than last season. He is now becoming a bit more of a two-way forward. His assists have been really, really good. So his point totals are actually really, really good. Goal scoring, he's not the lead goal scorer on the team. I think that's important, not relying on one player. I think we're spreading the scoring out when it comes to actually putting the puck in the net. But as a player, he is playing a lot better with how he brings other players into play. He's not being as selfish in front of goal. He's not shooting every opportunity. I think over the off-season, they've worked on his game. He didn't go to play at the World Championships. So he missed out on a gold medal at the World Championship with Finland there. So he didn't go to the World Championships. He took that extra time off. He's obviously worked with the coaching setup. He's getting a lot more assists. And that is a really important thing, is he's becoming a more of a multi-dimensional player. That's something he was criticised for in his earlier on. But the lack of goal scoring, is it harming the team? Kyle Connor is scoring a lot of goals. He's on a projected to get over 45. He might even hit 50. The way he's scoring. Scheifele's just Scheifele. He's chipping in with the goals and the assists. He's a solid all-round player. Scheifele's brilliant. He is the superstar of the team. Blake Wheeler's now got the franchise record. So other players are putting the puck in the net. Laine needs to score some more. Absolutely. I'm not happy with his goal scoring, but his assists and his all-round play is a lot better. So I think he's rounding out to be a better player than what he was last season. Last season was a disaster. Season before, he nearly got the goal scoring title, apart from that foot injury, slowed him down a little bit. But I think fitness was a concern last year. He wasn't fully fit. His off-ice actually the Fortnite addiction. I think, working with how he, his off-ice routine and getting him to be a more all-rounded professional with better diet, better sleeping patterns. I think they've done a lot of work with him. He's coming back as a better player. He's a better all-round player. He's better defensively as well. His defensive numbers have massively improved. His plus-minus is a hell of a lot better, although last night the whole team was shocking. I think knowing that there are other players. I mean, Appleton and Kopp and Roslovic's playing quite well, and they're moving the lines around as well, which I think having Brian Little out of the side has made the team better. Brian Little being injured has actually made the team better. It's ironic, because Perreault is a second, third, fourth line guy now. He's a solid veteran to have, but having Brian Little out of the lineup has actually helped the team. The fact that Brian Little is about to come back into the lineup, how are they going to fit Brian Little back in? Yes, we do need that depth centre, but some of the, like Appleton, come up done really well. Roslovic's having a really good run with the team. How do you fit Brian Little back in? I think that'll be interesting to see how that affects how Laine plays. Last season, that was a big debating point. Should they be on the same line? But you've got Wheeler. Wheeler can play centre. Scheifele's playing really well. Kopp, great on the forecheck. Takes some pressure of Laine defensively, but his defensive numbers are better. He's a better player this season. He's worked on his deficiencies. He needs to round out the whole game, but he's getting less criticism. He's playing a lot better. I think the team are playing better than people expected. And he's playing better as a result. I think the pressure's off the team this season. They weren't expected to be that good. So we'll see. Where are you in North America if they're predicting snow? Because we are having a really cold spell right now where we are. It's been warm the last week. It's just rained, and we were close to having the River Thames flood, and that would have been a disaster. But where are you? I haven't been to a couple of regions. Auckland to Wellington. So you're still on the North Island? That's a point. Talking about New Zealand, bro. Fish and chips. The debate that Pennsylvania. Okay, so the Rust Belt, the upper Appalachians. Yeah, I can see snow coming there. It's that time of year. That's one season. Last season, I think, was a poor season, but we're not at the All-Star break yet. We're not at the trade deadline yet. We'll see what happens after the All-Star break with the bye weeks as well. I think the All-Star break and bye weeks, once they're out the way and we get towards the trade deadline, we may see I mean, Shifley a couple of years ago, even though we missed the playoffs back in 2016, 2017, went on a tear. He went on a tear and then carried that on into 2017, 2018. So I still think he's bringing other players into play, and other players' goal scoring has gone up. So he's a better all-round player. He's a better team player. He's better defensively. You've got to, bearing in mind, he's still what? He's only 22. He's still technically 23. He's not reached his peak potential yet. And to compare him to Ovechkin, who's been in the league for what, nearly 16 years, I think is an unfair comparison per se. Ovechkin has always been on a team that has been, apart from a couple of seasons, a Stanley Cup playoff team, won the Stanley Cup. You cannot compare a guy in his third, fourth season to a guy in his 16th. I think this is where a lot of people get it wrong with player comparison and working out how players are going to project. Each player has his own strengths and weaknesses. That's something I've learned the last couple of years of being a YouTuber is when you're trying to compare players to each other, it's difficult to really compare. But I'm going to go back to the New Zealand thing because I'm going to make a really interesting point, and I'm going to go for another 5-10 minutes because I do actually have to get my kitchen sorted out for the plumber to come over in 2 hours. So I've got to get all the washing done and get that kitchen sink fixed. And I'll get to the All-Star game again. I've already discussed this, but let's discuss rugby league and the NRL and the New Zealand Warriors. Should the NRL have a second team in New Zealand and a team in Perth? I've debated that before. Should they go to Perth? Should they have a second team in New Zealand? Should the NRL go to 18 teams, considering they've been as high as 20 teams before? In 98, they were as high as 20 teams. So they've been higher in team numbers. And should they have a second team in the south in New Zealand? Should it be the South Island, North Island, where? And should they go to Perth? Now, I do think the NRL should go up to 18 teams because the AFL has got that on them, where they have those two extra teams. They have more fans, they have better crowd numbers, better attendance, the whole thing. And they can really call themselves a national league. The NRL, they have that one team. They have that one team in New Zealand, in Auckland. Should they have a second team in the North Island? I think Wellington would be a logical place to put it. I think there are enough people playing. Well, rugby, both codes of rugby in New Zealand is a religion, be it union or league. It's just religion. The issue is there enough people with disposable income and enough of a population base in New Zealand to support? That's the only concern I would have. But I would at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if it could work. There is enough rugby talent of both codes in New Zealand to have a second rugby league team professionally at the top level there. There is enough. I think 70-80% of New Zealanders play rugby at either code. It's like Canadians with about 70-75% playing ice hockey at some level, be it recreationally, youth level, or senior level. Rugby in both codes is the national sport. It doesn't matter if it's union or league. They've won both World Cups in league and union in my lifetime. Sonny Bill Williams has proven that. Yes, they are heavily reliant on the South Sea Islanders, but a lot of them have New Zealand passports. I think there is the playing base and the supporter base there. Could you have a second team in Auckland? Yeah, at a push, but then you're dividing a fan base that's been there for 25 years. I still think that there is enough in New Zealand to have that second team. We do know that the Canterbury Bulldogs take games to New Zealand outside of Auckland as home games every season. They do really well when they do that. I think having a second team in New Zealand with the NRL would be a really positive move. I also think having a team in Perth or a team somewhere else in New South Wales or the state of Victoria would be a positive move as well for the NRL, possibly Adelaide. But they tried Adelaide before in the early days and it didn't work after the Super League wars. But the NRL has been as high as 20 teams before. But would Dunedin have enough population to support an NRL team, considering that Super Rugby and NRL be played parallel? Will people have enough disposable income to go, right, we'll follow the Super Rugby and the NRL? Would they have enough money to do that? And would they be willing to go to 13 home games a season before finals? Can they afford that? is there enough rugby league fans already there? We know there's rugby fans of both codes throughout New Zealand, and it is a religion. But is there enough to sustain not only the team for the first couple of seasons, but long term? Look at the Gold Coast Titans. Their crowd numbers are lower now than what they were when the team was set up. They can't fill that stadium at Cbus Super Stadium. There's a stand that sits empty every game. So not only do you have to have a team there, the team has to be successful. And this is where the Warriors have struggled, is the team isn't successful. Travis Green. Yeah, Travis Green. Operation Slapshot. Remember that? He was one of the players that was caught up in Operation Slapshot 13 years ago, was Travis Green, alongside Jeremy Roenick, for placing bets on sports games illegally. Check that out. Louis Eriksson. Louis Eriksson's a good player. There's a lot of debate about Louis Eriksson. He's a good player. Let's not knock him. He's made, he's played at the Olympics. He's played at the World Championships. He's won medals in those events. He's played for Boston. I think he won a Stanley Cup at Boston. The Sedin experiment didn't work. His time at Vancouver has not been a happy period, but the team hasn't been a playoff team. So Louis Eriksson isn't a bad player. I think the issue is Brock Besser. Where do you play him? Is Travis? Some of Travis Green's coaching lineup changes have. I have even the commentators at games. So when I was watching the Jets Canucks game, the full match replay online, I couldn't watch it live because I don't have I have a TV, but I don't have an aerial, so I can't plug it into the satellite dish on my building, which is frustrating. So I can't actually get cable or satellite TV at the moment. The commentators at the Jets Canucks game were commenting on some of Travis Green's coaching decisions and lineup changes. I don't think Louis Eriksson's a bad player. I think he's a solid NHL player. His best days possibly are behind him. Some fitness issues, clearly the confidence problems, clearly maybe it's not working with the organisation, and that contract is a bad contract to move him on. But he's a solid NHL player. Brock Besser, again, solid NHL player. Are they playing him in the wrong positions? Yes. Is that on Travis Green? Yes. Should they swap them around? Absolutely. Louis Eriksson, when it comes to the Canucks, is a bottom six forward with the way the team is set up. Brock Besser is a second line forward or first line forward with the way the team is set up. Brogan Rafferty's AHL season, I don't know enough about the AHL. I don't follow the AHL passionately enough because Liam Kirk is still in the OHL. So until Liam Kirk, British player, moves into the ECHL, AHL affiliates of the Arizona Coyotes, I don't necessarily have enough interest in the AHL to really religiously. Plus, the AHL doesn't get, and the ECHL do not get enough media exposure as they should, which should help. If they got better TV deals in North America outside of Canada, alongside the NHL, if they got a good TV deal, that would grow the game massively, hugely in North America. So you can talk about the TV deals with the AHL, ECHL, and NHL in the US affecting that. A lot of heat's heading towards the GM at Vancouver as well. Jim Benning and Travis Green are under pressure. I think Travis Green's job is pretty safe. I think it's Jim Benning who's under more pressure with Vancouver. The Gold Coast Titans, Jesus. The Titans, yeah, they've been a disaster for a while now. They've had some really good players play for them. And they've only made, I did a video on the Titans' history. They've only made the finals, I think, 3 or 4 times in their entire history since they've been in the league. But they've played the fewest seasons. They've never made the grand final. First up, I think the way the team is run off the field is a problem. But at the same time, you've got to look at the team on the field as well and the underperformance of players. On the Warriors side of things, they may be mid-table, but sometimes they miss the finals. And when they do get the finals, have they made the grand final once? Again, these teams are lacking success when it comes to postseason, so finals football, and they're lacking success in the regular season as well. I don't think they necessarily will move the team. I don't think that's necessarily going to happen, but at the same time, if they can't sell out the stadium, they have that empty stand at one end. Open that stand up. Spread the crowd around a little bit. Make it look like there's more people actually in the stadium than actually is there. Have a whole stand empty is worrying, but Brisbane were shocking last. Just because they might move into Brisbane, the Broncos were pretty crap last year as well. They had the most humbling finals defeat to the Parramatta Eels. They got nilled. They got destroyed. The Brisbane Broncos were absolutely hopeless last year. So just because Brisbane's been the most consistent team in rugby league history for the last 30 years doesn't necessarily putting a second team there solves a problem. The fact you've only got 3 professional teams in Queensland, could that be an issue? Is Townsville too far north? Should they have moved the Cowboys further south? No, I mean, debate's there, but you've got to look at the Melbourne Storm. Successful team. Rugby league in the state of Victoria is non-existent. Outside of the Melbourne Storm, non-existent. Very few schools and local clubs exist. So the NRL has to do more in grassroots football across the board to improve the quality for all 16 teams. This is why I'm saying have 2 extra teams thrown into the competition, because they've been as high as 20 before and they've shrunk the league down. You could have a team in Perth. It would work. When they take games on the road to Perth and State of Origin, they sell out games. When the Canterbury Bulldogs take games outside of Auckland, as they take home games to New Zealand, they sell out games. There are clearly enough people in New Zealand and the rest of Australia who support rugby league who would buy into any expansion team. And there's enough Titans fans who keep going to Titans games to pack 2/3 of the stadium there at Cbus Super Stadium. So, and they have world-class players playing for the Titans. They just don't play very well. Simple. The Tyrrell Mitchell, we've already discussed that. Yeah, it's a big step to take across the city divide, but I think the Roosters will be all right without him. I think the Roosters have a good solid production line of players. He came through their production line of players. The Rabbitohs also have a good solid production line of players. I think the Rabbitohs are lacking up front with Sam Burgess' retirement and George Burgess going back to Super League. I think they are lacking a little bit in the forward pack with 2 of the 3 Burgess brothers going on. It's going to be a fun season to watch. Salary cap is what it is. If you take the salary cap out, he stays at the Roosters. The Roosters are the best team in the league. Simple. You take the salary cap away from the NRL, the Roosters are the best team in the league. But I say this, you can have a team of superstars and they're crap. The Titans have had some really class players play for them in their existence and made the finals, I think, 3 or 4 seasons. I think 3 seasons, 2 back-to-back. They've had some great players play for them. They've had some really great halfbacks, Jared Hayne, even though the Hayne experiment didn't work and he got the coach sacked. You look at it and you go, right, the Gold Coast Titans have had some class, state of origin, international players play for them. Can't play as a team. Can't take that next step. So it's all well and good saying, the salary cap controls costs, blah, 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 blah. But here's the thing. You can put a team of superstars together and they don't work. It's all about team chemistry. I think that's part of the problem with the Titans is team chemistry, but also off-field issues. To put an NRL team, I would go Wellington. It's the second city in size and it is the capital. So there is money in Wellington. There is a lot of central investment in Wellington. The government central government could assist with grassroots development of sport because New Zealand is a sporting nation. It's a sports mad nation. For a nation that size to have both men and women's football teams qualify for the Football World Cup, to win both Rugby World Cups and to get to a Cricket World Cup final last summer, in the one-day format of the game, which I watched, and that went down to the wire. For a nation of its population size, New Zealand does very, very well. And I would think, touch wood, I would go Wellington if the NRL was to go put a second team in New Zealand. I think that's the location you would put it. Just to keep it on the North Island, to keep travel costs and travel distance down as much as possible. Because South Island, I'm not sure it would work. You want to try and keep travel distances down, player welfare and all that. But I would go Wellington. Make a rivalry between Wellington and Auckland. There's always been a rivalry between Wellington and Auckland. Auckland's the biggest city, Wellington's the capital. There's always that rivalry of the smallest big city in the world, smallest big capital in the world, Wellington, and Auckland, the main metropolis. Parramatta Eels going into 2020. I'm looking forward to them playing a second season at Bankwest. They could be dark horses. They were a very, very good team at home last year, and home form counts for a lot. They had some great results at home. They've definitely got a stability now off the field, and they look really good going forward as a team. They were exciting to watch last year. Defensively, a bit shambolic, but going forward, I would definitely say they are dark horses, and if they make the top four, they could make the final. It's been a long time without success at Parramatta and a long time without stability. Now they have a team that looks like it could do back-to-back finals appearances and take the next step, and they have that new stadium and they have that stability. I'm liking Parramatta's chances. They look good, but we're not in NRL pre-season yet, so we're still in training camp, whereas the Super League's already in pre-season and the Super League season starts next month, NRL month after. We still have some time before the NRL kicks off, so watch this space. But I think Parramatta look pretty dangerous attacking wise. They were brilliant last season. Defensively, I think is their weakness. Personally, that's my personal opinion on the Parramatta Eels. Rafferty's 24 years old. He signed from university. 37 points for 40 games. It's his first season outside of college. He's missed out the ECHL, so he's missed out that professional league altogether. But if he's almost a point a game for a D-man, that's good numbers for any level. It doesn't matter what professional league you're playing in. If you're putting up a point a game as a defenseman, that's pretty good. But I would say leave him in the AHL for another season. He's got to get used to playing professional hockey, and playing in a professional organisation that's completely different to university, in the sense that it's a different kind of grind. The university seasons are a lot shorter. I would say keep him down there for another season. If he does get called up, it will be as injury cover. I think possibly he might get that if the Canucks are to make a playoff push, with it being so congested from second in conference to ninth. And bear in mind, I'm a Jets fan, so I don't want to miss out ourselves with wildcard spots and stuff like that. Defense depth is important. I think I will read up on Brogan Rafferty later on. I think first season out of college, sometimes it takes a little bit longer, especially coming up at 24 years old rather than 21, 22. He's going to be behind other rookies if he does come into the league and plays a minimum number of games to be classed as a rookie for this one season. We'll see what happens after the All-Star break and coming up to trade deadline. And we'll see what happens. Well, yeah, the fact he's being paid that much, that's a bit steep for a guy who's only played 2 NHL games. But he doesn't. That also means he doesn't technically qualify for an NHL pension. He qualifies for an AHL pension. So that's going to be interesting. So we'll see what he does. I can see him getting some game time. We've seen other teams have injuries galore and they're relying on their AHL affiliate. But you've got to think with the AHL affiliate and that coach wanting to obviously take that team to the Calder final and win the Calder Cup. Having his best players pinched by the NHL is going to frustrate how you name a lineup, who you put out on the ice, the team you have available to you. That's got to be frustrating. Then you've got to pinch players from the ECHL to bring up to cover your players going to the NHL. And then the ECHL coach goes, well, that's my best player. Why is my best goaltender forward team? Like it has to be frustrating though when you're an affiliate organisation going up the levels when sometimes your best players are getting pinched by the team in the league above. That has to be frustrating if you're trying to build a team that's winning and keep that continuity, going all the way through. And then the ECHL have to go and look at the players who are still possibly in juniors or over in Europe and go, can we possibly have an exemption? Can we get this guy? Possibly have to sign a free agent who may be not having a travelling free agent, looking at the SPHL going, have we got any free agents available? Have we got a player who's on a short-term contract that we could pinch for a couple of games? That kind of thing. And that's where it gets frustrating when the affiliates have to give players up to the team in the league above. So you have to feel for his AHL coach going, will the big team in Vancouver be pinching one of our best players? That's a question you have to ask yourself, is if the affiliate team has to give up their best player to it gets frustrating. It does get frustrating. And as a hockey fan in this country, we do have players on the team that I support who are on two-way contracts with the team in the league above, and we have players on two-way contracts with a team in the league below. So you've got that's where it gets frustrating for coaches when you got to go, oh, we lose this player for X amount of games. We had a guy play for us at Bracknell who's now playing in the GB national side, plays for Nottingham Panthers now, who was on a two-way contract, and we lost him for half a season. He was on a two-way contract, and it affected our defence because he was one of our main defensemen who played big minutes. He's also taller and heavier than Zdeno Chara, so he's I think 6'10". Josh Tiger Tetlow, check him out. We lost him for half a season, and then the next season he signed full time with the Nottingham Panthers. So we had to rebuild our defence corps, which is frustrating if you're a coach going, our best defenseman or our most a guy who plays, not necessarily our best defenseman, but a guy who's playing 25, 30 minutes a night in your defence corps is now gone for periods of a season, not through injury, but through call-up. And now you lose him. You've got to replace him. You've got to find someone to replace him. And that is frustrating as a coach going, I've lost a key member of my squad for 5-6 games because there's an injury in the team above. That's going to be frustrating. But at the same time, if you have a pretty good depth and good development and you have players who are healthy scratches, you can shake things around a bit. So that happens. That happens. Yeah, I can't wait for the NRL season either. I'm looking forward to it. It coincides with the second half of the NHL season. So when the NRL gets into full swing of the NHL is, Stanley Cup's done. The AFL and NRL are competing with each other. I'm looking forward to watching a bit more AFL footy this season as well. I didn't watch nearly enough last year. I caught a couple of games, and I'm frustrated with myself for that because Aussie rules is great fun to watch. But again, there's a debate about changing of contact area, the tackle area, evolving rules, things like that. But I'm looking forward to both the AFL and the NRL. That's good fun to look forward to. I'm going to take another 10 minutes, and I've actually got to get my flat ready for the plumber. I've got to do a lot of tidying up. I've got an hour and a half to do it all, and I really don't want to do it. I've got washing everywhere. I've got pipes leaking, and I've had leaks for 3 months now. It's actually flooded the flat downstairs. I've also got to talk to my neighbour in the flat downstairs. Say, look, the plumber's turned up. So there you go. Adelaide, you've got Port Adelaide and Adelaide. But the AFL compared to the NRL has teams in Western Australia, South Australia, Victoria, New South Wales, and Queensland. It doesn't have a team permanently in Tasmania, which is a surprise considering that a lot of AFL players come from Tassie and they have a big domestic league in Tasmania and Northern Territory because I think to play games in Darwin, you would kill the players. I think it'd be too hot. But you can call it a national competition because it goes coast to coast, whereas the NRL is mostly East Coast, Melbourne notwithstanding, and Auckland notwithstanding. It's predominantly the East Coast of New South Wales, Sydney, Brisbane, up to, Townsville. That's where I think the AFL wins the battle of the two leagues in the Antipodes down under. Is you can really call the AFL a national competition. You can't call the NRL a national competition when they don't have professional teams in Perth, in Adelaide, a second team in New Zealand. You can't really call it the better league. You can't. Even though I think it's the better quality sport and more fun to watch, you just cannot call it the superior competition. You cannot, because they do not have a team all year round in Perth or a team all year round in Adelaide, for example. In two other big metropolitan areas in Australia, they don't have teams. And the state of Victoria, they're not developing the game at grassroots level enough. That's where the NRL and rugby league as a whole sport needs to come in and go, right, we need to really grow the grassroots in this location, because then it grows the sport and then it gives us an opportunity to expand the sport past 16 teams and grow the second tier, the reserve grade, and then lower grades. I think Western Australia has more players playing at NRL level footy than the state of Victoria. Perth has not had a team for nearly 20 years. I'm just putting it out there, and the debate of whether to move a team out of Sydney or move the Gold Coast Titans or put a team in New Zealand, another team in New Zealand, is not going to go away until the NRL decides to grow the game. Plain and simple. If you don't have the grassroots where you have teams, the game won't grow. Yeah, I've picked Green Bay to go for it. I got the last NFL pick I picked right. I haven't followed the NFL this season. I've said that every live stream. I haven't watched it. I've been asked questions. I'm just randomly guessing, but I hope Green Bay do it. Yeah, I think Perth does deserve it. Perth is the fastest growing city in Australia. It's an upwardly mobile, young, affluent city. It's got a lot of money in it. It's a growing urban area with Fremantle as well, and a few other urban locations around Perth in the urban area. So it's got a growing population, a young population. They're financially affluent population. It's a place you want to go if you want to put a professional sports team in a franchise system or in a non-relegation system. I don't understand why Super Rugby turned its back on Perth with Western Force. Do not understand the logic behind Rugby Australia. But then Israel Folau came along and gave us 2 years worth of YouTube videos, and it's still the Israel Folau thing is not going away with some of his rhetoric coming out of his mouth. This is why I'm an atheist. Nothing against religion personally. Just sometimes when religion opens its mouth, I just got to point and laugh and go, how stupid they sound. The issue with Rugby Australia turning its back on Perth, I think Perth has been hard done by when it comes to rugby union. Rugby league has been there before. When it takes games on the road there, ticket sales are good. I think they could definitely support. I mean, State of Origin proved you can pack out, you can get 60, 70,000 people to watch a rugby league game where there's no players born in Western Australia playing in it. It's Queensland versus New South Wales, played in Perth. Just putting that out there. If you can sell 70,000 tickets for that for a one-off occasion, you can have a team that will be supported in Perth, absolutely. Because when they take games on the road there throughout the NRL season, mostly the Rabbitohs and the Bulldogs, tickets get sold. Fans turn up. I think it's a perfect location. The NRL has got to be having someone in their finance department going through the figures, going, many clubs are barely breaking even. To bring a new team in or 2 new teams in will increase the amount of cash flow coming into the league. I think they've had a team before. It's the perfect city for. I mean, look, AFL has won Perth. This is where the NRL is making a mistake because AFL has got to jump on them by 20, 30 years. They've got 2 very successful teams in their area. They're well ahead in that hearts and minds kind of battle. But when the NRL takes games on the road to Perth, they sell tickets. Fans of every team come out and wear their jerseys, and local teams of the local Western Australian League. They come out, they support. It's a no-brainer for me. There's more people, registered rugby league players in Western Australia than the state of Victoria, yet they have persisted in supporting the Melbourne Storm, even when they were breaching salary cap and cheating. And the Melbourne Storm struggled to fill out stadium, Amy Super Stadium, wherever it is, Amy Stadium. Perth is a no-brainer. But that's up to the NRL and Todd Greenturd. Yeah, I don't like Todd Greenberg at all. I don't think he's the right guy to lead the NRL forward. All we've had with Todd Greenberg is scandal after scandal after scandal. Let's have some positivity. Let's just put a team in Perth. Let's just stop this debate, because this is where the NRL is lagging behind the AFL massively. And if you put a team in Perth, you've got to put a second team in New Zealand or a team in Adelaide. You've got to explore the option, or another team in Queensland. To only have 3 teams in Queensland is madness. You've got Ipswich. You've got possibly another team in Brisbane, or the Greater Brisbane metropolitan area, of course, because that's a big city. You've got Cairns. I know you've got Townsville, the Queensland Cowboys, but the Greater Brisbane area, you could have a second team. You could have another team, Ipswich. It's again something that the NRL is asleep at the wheel. You could have a team in Perth. You could have a team in Adelaide. Have another team in New Zealand. They are missing a trick, personally. And I think Perth is the prime location because of the affluent nature of the city, the growth of the city. It's a very young, cosmopolitan city. Absolutely put a team there. But I'm going to leave that there. Unless you've got any more questions, I'm going to wind this up because I do have to get my flat ready in the next hour and 45 minutes for this plumber. My flat is an absolute shithole, and it's not very tidy. But it's been really great answering a lot of questions. A lot of interesting points put forward, and of course, a woman on her mobile phone decided to park, just put the hazards on, coming off one of the busiest road junctions in the area. That was kind of funny. She almost caused like 5 accidents. And as a trained mechanic, I thought, should I go down and help her? And then I thought, oh, she's on the phone. Okay. So how the police didn't decide to go around just to double check, because her engine was running the entire time. It wasn't she had turned the car off. She just decided to park on a roundabout. It's just, you don't do that. You just don't do that. But that was kind of funny. But thank you very much, guys, for watching and all your questions. I know you're actually, none of you are from the UK. I think we've got people from Canada, Australia, New Zealand. So this is why I love this channel, because I have people from the other side of the world watching, bearing in mind it's either really early in the morning in Canada, in Western Canada, or really late at night in New Zealand and Australia, and you're taking part in this. This is why I love this channel. I know it is what it is, but I love the channel because of that. So thank you very much for all your questions. Thank you very much for sticking with me for 2.5 hours. And I'll have some more videos for you very, very soon. And keep your eyes peeled over the next day or so for some videos on the Astros cheating scandal in the Major League Baseball. So we've got that to look forward to. So the Major League Baseball cheating scandal. Some more rugby league videos on who to watch, like Latrell Mitchell. I would definitely be doing a video on Latrell Mitchell. That's really interesting with his cross from the Roosters to the Rabbitohs. I think a few videos. I think Sonny Williams have got a video coming up, and Gareth Widdop as well, because they've moved around from NRL to Super League. And Williams going to the Raiders, I could do a video on him, because his style of play and the fact that the NRL is a little bit more physical than the Super League. There's a bit more physicality. He could tire out defenses, and you put him on against a tiring defense, he could be interesting, but there's a lot of mistakes in his game. He will give the opportunity to the other team when he gives away a miss pass or a knock on or a poor kick. His game isn't as rounded as Charlie Hodgson. His game isn't as rounded as some of the other halfbacks and dummy halves in the game, be it in Super League or NRL. So that's an interesting one. But for now, thank you very much for watching. I'll have some more videos for you. Keep your eyes peeled, possibly later today, but very, very soon.